The ideas that gave birth to our nation are the ideas that our nation is resistant to right now, and we should talk about that all the time.
In a world where narratives are shaped by corporations and gatekeepers, independent voices matter more than ever. Badlands Media brings together citizen journalists, researchers, and independent thinkers.
The truth is triggering.
Question the narrative. Explore the facts.
It's authenticity, courage, resilience.
Search for the truth others won't.
It's not about being first or being right.
The information war is changing.
It's about being authentic.
Embrace the friction.
Embrace the friction.
Shut the f*** up.
Authentically antagonizing. Join the movement.
I'm going to say how I feel.
Follow Badlands Media.
This is about the future.
The Badlands. What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good day. Good afternoon. Whatever time it's playing. This is Geopolitics with Ghost. Welcome. I am your host, Gordon McCormick, the ghost-based Patrick Henry. This is Badlands Media. Today is, I believe, August 2nd, 2026. It's currently Saturday night when I'm recording this. I believe this is airing on Sunday. And I just thought, with starting my new job on Monday, I would go ahead and record one more of these. Don't know when I'm going to have free time after this next, and there's plenty that happened this week, so I just thought it was worth getting together and kind of reviewing this week, seeing where we were. Hope everyone had a good week. Lots to discuss. Let's just start with the most recent thing that Chris Paul shared with our group, and that would be Bannon. Bannon. His show from today, Saturday. Let's just listen to this for a few minutes. This is Ben Harnwell on War Room.
Put out was 500,000. They had
and the context they're speaking about this this invasion of what is it, Ceuta? It's the Spanish territory in Morocco, which is northwestern Africa at the Gibraltar. So let's just listen to this.
1.2 million applicants. It's not a case that they're going to just take 500,000 of those and give them papers. If all
so a little more context. The controversy here is that the Spanish government is basically just allowing these migrants who are just flooding into this Spanish territory, which is not part. You know what? We got to pull the maps up. I'm sorry. I got to provide a little more context. I was just trying to show a cool little clip, but go ahead and just pull up the full context because, you know, we do maps here. Okay, so here's Gibraltar on the opposing side. So here's Gibraltar. To give some context, we're looking at the mouth of the Mediterranean, where the Mediterranean meets the Atlantic Ocean, known as the Gibraltar. And that would be this territory, Rock of the Gibraltar, on the north coast, in the Strait of Gibraltar, rather. Now, on the south coast, the southern coast, you have, is it Ceuta? I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ceuta, I don't know. Whatever it is. It's this tiny little territory, and it is, let's just measure it. I mean, it's 4 miles long. So this is tiny. It's 4 miles long by 2 miles. So we're talking about, I mean, it's not 8 square miles because it's this tiny little spit of land. But this is technically Spanish territory. Okay, now it's in the country of Morocco, near Tangier. Okay, and so this, you're seeing all the clips online. Let's go ahead and just pull that up too. You're seeing all the clips online of like the African migrants just flooding into this territory, and a lot of the clickbait artists are putting out there, you know, Spain has fallen. So here's like the really, really famous one. You know, Spain has fallen, because it's like, man, I mean, look at that. That's pretty insane. Again, we're not looking at, I mean, this right here. So we're not looking at the Spanish mainland. We're not looking at the European continent here. We're looking at Africa. This is African soil. It just happens to be Spanish territory. And so I guess under Spanish law, I mean, this is all part of Spain. So once you make it into this territory, you can just waltz right into the rest of Spain. And the way the European Union is set up is that once you gain entry into one country in the European Union, you have free movement around the rest of the European Union. There's no other customs or border control. It's all considered one territory. And so that has other countries. This has other countries now, and Spain is saying they're going to give all these people asylum. So that has some of these other countries kind of freaking out. Italy, namely Italy. So that brings us to the Bannon clip. Let's go back and listen to Harnwell and Bannon talk about this.
All of those applications are valid. That is to say, they fulfill the criteria. That is to say that they can demonstrate they were in Spain before 31st of last year.
Yes.
And they submitted their application between April and the end of June. If that's a valid application, they're going to get their papers. And then they can travel anywhere in Europe that they want to. 1.2 million invaders. So whilst you have this orgy of performatism by the European leaders, including your girl, right? I have to mention it again, Giorgia Meloni. You might have seen that they had this letter going around open letter amongst the 22 of the 27 heads of government over the last 12 hours, insisting that they have this emergency video meeting amongst Europe's interior ministers to urgently discuss the situation.
Urgently.
You know who organized it? You know who organized that letter, don't you? You know, without me even having to. It was our girl.
Our girl. She's performed actress number one. Nominated for best actress in a performance in a role. Ben, where do people go get you over the weekend? We got to bounce. Where do they get you?
Get her, my.
Okay, so our girl, actress number one is calling her. Now they're being tongue in cheek. They're being totally sarcastic here because they're basically, I think they're accusing Meloni of being like full of it. They're calling it performative, which he's doing. Perhaps they're right. Who knows? But I mean, come on. Who's been calling Meloni our girl for 2 years now? Pretty sure it's been only me. Maybe 3 years, going back to 2023. Whenever her and Trump and Elon Musk had the love triangle, when they were going back and forth from Italy to Mar-a-Lago, that weird thing that the media did. Anyway, what they're referring to is this. Italy says it's temporarily suspending EU Schengen arrangement with Spain after 60,000 migrants meet Ceuta. Okay, and so the Schengen agreement is a treaty which led to the creation of Europe's Schengen area, which you can see right here. So this is the Schengen area. Okay, it's a system of open borders that encompasses 29 European countries that have officially abolished border controls as their common borders. An element within the wider area of freedom, security, and justice policy of the European Union that mostly functions as a single jurisdiction under a common visa policy for international travel purposes. The area is named after the 1985 Schengen Agreement and the 1990 Schengen Convention, both signed in Schengen, Luxembourg. So Italy is saying, our girl Meloni is saying that she is suspending this. This is after... this is from 2 days ago. It says Italy will not stand by and watch. Meloni wants Spain out of the Schengen over Ceuta migrant crisis. Italy has called for Spain to be suspended from the European Union's passport-free Schengen area after thousands of migrants entered the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. I don't know how you say it. I'm just going to say Ceuta. Ceuta. From Morocco, escalating tensions over Europe's handling of irregular migration. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni on Thursday said her government was prepared to consider exceptional measures, including suspending Spain from the Schengen agreement following the latest migrant surge. Quote, "We are in the process of bringing together the competent bodies, and once those meetings are over, we are ready to act, including through exceptional measures such as suspending the Schengen agreement with Spain," Meloni wrote on X. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on with this whole op. At face value, like right here, here's how I would take what we're seeing. Let's get to the origins of this, the root of this problem here in a minute. But what we're seeing here is I think, and Meloni, of course, our girl, Bannon's being a little tongue-in-cheek with this, but Meloni is pushing for the nationalism, moving away from this open border arrangement where you can just enter one country in Europe, on continental Europe, and then go anywhere in the whole region. And of course, like, this is the map. I mean, look at that map. Okay, I mean, this map is not messing around. You enter any one of these countries that's highlighted in blue here, and you can go to any other part of the blue area without going through customs and border control. And especially when you're talking about Spain, Italy, and Greece, which are the three countries in the south here. Once you enter those countries, you can make it all the way up to Norway. You can make it all the way over to Iceland without having to go through customs and border control. This is how the invasion of Europe has happened over the past 20 plus years, is this system right here. 30 years, really. I mean, 40 years. It's going back to the 80s. This is how it's happened, is because of this system. And now Meloni is challenging it, and Meloni is saying, no, Italy is not going to put up with this. We should kick Spain out. I mean, this is, again, she is the one at the tip of the spear. She is the one. She is the forcing function now that is challenging the autonomy of the European Union, or challenging the authority of the European Union, challenging the authority of this collectivism that Europe has surrendered itself to, moving away from nationalism. She is now moving back towards nationalism. And I think you're going to see, just out of necessity, these other countries are going to have to react and they're going to have to push for the same thing. So I find this very, very interesting. Again, it's our girl Meloni. Now, since we're already talking about the subject, let's just go ahead and kind of walk through the whole psyop. Because this Ceuta thing is interesting, to say the least. So the discussion points that are happening online right now are that this is Israel, that this is Israel orchestrating this whole thing against Spain, because Spain has been going back to 2018, starting in 2018, Spain really started to defect from the whole Zionist movement. That's when Spain really started to say, we don't just blindly support Israel. We don't think Israel's like doing the right thing when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to a lot of this stuff. We don't blindly support Zionism. And the reason for that is that Spain is a hardcore Catholic state. And unlike Italy, there seems to be more of a separation of church and state with Italy, because the Vatican is its own government. I mean, Rome is obviously, it's a Catholic country. It's it's what Saudi Arabia is to Islam. That's what Italy is to Catholicism. But Spain historically has been a much more ardent political body in terms of its loyalty to the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith, I would say. Whereas in Italy, you've had a much more tumultuous political history when it comes to Rome, the Vatican, Florence. I mean, Italy for generations, for centuries, was very much a collection of kingdoms fighting one another for power, city-states fighting one another. Even in the 1800s, it was, I think Italy only unified in the late 1800s, around the time Germany did. Because, going back in the 1500s and 1600s, 1400s, you had Florence versus Rome in the Renaissance, where Florence was way more libertarian. I don't know if libertarian is the right word. Way more progressive in its view of art and its view of culture, whereas Rome aligned more with Spain, I would say, in being far more conservative. And even now, I thought it was fascinating when I first went to Europe 13 years ago. I lived in Florence for a summer, and it was fascinating travel. I didn't go to Rome, but I went to southern Italy, and I was told this, just generally speaking. You go to northern Italy, Florence, Milan, just that whole area, and you will see much more like brightly colored fashion, people wearing what you would expect, like high fashion, right? Like Milan is like the capital of fashion. It's replaced Paris as like the center of fashion. Florence is also very much a fashionable city. You go to southern Italy, and it's like, instead of the women wearing, showing more skin, they're far more covered up, more similar to what you would see like in a Muslim country, in terms of just like, they're wearing like head coverings, hair coverings. Any church you go into in any part of the country, you're really women are all expected to cover their hair, cover their shoulders. But you go to the southern Italy, and all the women are wearing neutral colors. I mean, all the people really are wearing neutral colors: tan, black, white. It's like the fashion is far more muted. Doesn't mean you don't see high fashion. It's just not as common. So I thought that was interesting. Even today, when you go to northern Italy and southern Italy, there's a difference in their culture. And so Spain has been much more ardent in its Catholicism, I would say, than Rome has, the government. And then, of course, in the early 20th century, Rome, because again, Rome has been independent of the Vatican. The Vatican is its own, just like the city of London, it's its own government. It's totally autonomous. It has the Swiss Guard, so it's police are the Swiss, who are like neutral. It's a very weird system. And so Rome has been, politically over the past century plus, has been very different from the Vatican. We had the fascists, Mussolini, rise up in the 1910s, 1920s. That was National Socialism, which is what then inspired the Germans to become National Socialists, Hitler, the Third Reich. And then post-World War II, Rome has been far more progressive than I would say the Vatican and just the West in general, America in general. Rome has been a much more progressive government, and we've talked about on this show how the average government has lasted about a year and a half since the end of World War II in Italy. So they have not had a very consistent, stable political system. Spain, on the other hand, has had a much more stable political situation going back the past several hundred years. So Spain in 2018, this is all a long-winded way of saying Spain has been more consistently aligned consistent in their cultural values, religious values. And so Catholicism, of course, is immune to Zionism because Catholicism never adopted the Scofield Bible. They don't have any of that belief of, the land was promised to the Jews 3,000 years ago. That doesn't pop up anywhere in the traditional Bible, the pre-1908 Scofield Bible. That is very much a evangelical Protestant worldview. And so as such, Spain just doesn't have the kind of loyalty to Israel that Protestants have. Specifically American evangelicals, but even just the rest of Europe. And so Spain really has had less of a problem just saying, you know what, we're just not going to do it anymore. And so they stopped. And so that combined with just the natural progressivism that we've seen sweep through Europe in the past half century, that has all driven. And of course, the secularization, the movement away from religion in general. But you have the religious right in Spain not loyal to Israel. And then you have the progressive left ardently just against Israel, because that's just kind of how the progressive left everywhere is now. And that's a recipe for, in 2008, Spain defecting from Zionism. So because of that, we've had a lot of political rhetoric. Netanyahu in 2019 and his son were both saying in 2019 they were calling on the Muslims to invade Spain. Here's Yair Netanyahu. This post has been going viral. Here's May 25th, 2019. Yair Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu's son, and he says, "Dear Arabs and Muslims, want to free occupied Arab Islamic lands? Here's a good start." Now, this is all like tongue-in-cheek joke because they're basically throwing it back in the face of Spain, where Spain is saying, hey, you should recognize Palestine, give the Muslims their land back, whatever. And so they're saying, oh, if you want to go give Muslims their land back, why don't you start with all these territories in Morocco that are technically part of Spain? And it just kind of lists all these really, really tiny territories that are technically Spanish. And you can see Ceuta is one of them. And then he says the next day, this is May 26, 2019, dear Spanish people, I see you all got upset. Ceuta and Melilla are tiny territories you own across the sea on another continent. Now imagine how we feel when your government calls for Israel to give away Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, which is the Jewish heartland, and its place, next post, place of birth for more than 3,000 years ago. It's in the Bible. Check it out. Judea and Samaria are 15 kilometers away from Tel Aviv, our economical hub. I think he means economic hub, and cut through our capital, Jerusalem. It is also half of Israel's territory. Even with it, we are about the size of Palma de Mallorca, which is a Spanish island. Let's make a deal. We won't fund NGOs in your country calling you to give away Ceuta and Melilla, and you will stop funding NGOs in our country that calls us to give away Judea and Samaria. And to you leftists and dear journalists, you always claim that our allies in Eastern Europe are very anti-Semitic, while Western Europe is enlightened and liberal. I suggest you read the super anti-Semitic responses, medieval style, from your Spanish friends who fund the leftist organizations in the country. Yeah, then he's just responding to other people. Yeah, and then he comes back. This is from 15 hours ago. This is from like Saturday morning. He says, I see that anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists are using this tweet from 2019 as quote-unquote proof for their absurd blood libels against Jews in Israel. This is absurd. This is the original 2019 tweet, and I explained exactly why I posted it in the thread. The tweet was intended to highlight the irony of Spain criticizing Israel's presence in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and calling to free Palestine. Even though this region is the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, it is filled with Jewish archaeological sites dating back thousands of years, makes up nearly half of Israel's territory, lies only a few miles from Tel Aviv, and includes Jerusalem, Israel's capital. At the same time, Spain still controls 2 enclaves in Morocco on the African continent across the Mediterranean, yet Spain has no intention of giving up these territories, even though they are not essential to Spain's security or survival, nor are they the cradle of the Spanish nation in the way Judea and Samaria are for the Jewish people. So why does Spain preach to Israel about giving up Judea and Samaria while funding radical NGOs in Israel that advocate for Israel's withdrawal from their area? The point of the tweet was to expose the irony, hypocrisy, and audacity of Spain's demands of Israel. It was also meant to highlight the hypocrisy of the Arab Muslim obsession with the Muslim land of Palestine, while largely ignoring Spain's continued control of territories on the African continent that were historically under Muslim rule. Okay. Yeah, so the difference, I get the point he's making, but the difference is that Spain is not actively trying to expand those borders and like take over more territory. These are territories that they've controlled for like 800 years, 1,000 years, whatever. And they're not trying to like move those goalposts, move the border. I mean, it's night and day, the comparison. The point is taken. I get what he's saying. I get what a lot of these influencers and Israeli Jews are saying. Here's where it's like, y'all are really, really dumb. Either y'all are just really, really dumb, or you're really arrogant, or you're really just full of yourself, or whatever. They don't understand. Like, here is, I mean, you go on X right now and you just look up like an Israeli flag, and you'll just find all the people who have Israeli flags in their, and these are like large accounts, like this guy, Yoav Kaufman. I mean, he has 18,000 followers, but they're much larger accounts doing this, where he says, 2 states for 2 nations living side by side in peace and prosperity. Now, this guy's like, what they're saying is much more aggressive than just retake the territories in Morocco that belong to you. They're calling to cut the Iberian Peninsula in half and just give half of it to Morocco. They're not doing themselves any favors by posting this kind of stuff, because the theories that are out there, the ideas that are out there, are that this is a coordinated Mossad op to undermine Spain, undermine Europe, all that. There's also the fact that, I mean, come on, the theories that are out there about, what is that plan called? It'll come to me in a minute, but there's a lot of theories out there that Jewish billionaires are the ones who are actually funding this stuff. They're the ones that are actually pushing for mass immigrant migration. We have this post from, let me see. Let me pull this up. I included this in Friday's brief. Here's Charlie Kirk, sometime like in the year leading up to his death.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies pre-Earth happened. And it's not just the colleges, it's the nonprofits.
Oh, God. All right. Well, for some reason that it's not playing very well, but yeah. So Charlie Kirk is explaining that, I think we probably played this clip before, that Jewish billionaires are funding like the open border stuff. They're funding the, it's not just NGOs. Okay, here's the actual clip.
Have been pushing the exact kind of hate. Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them. Now, I don't like generalizations. Not every Jewish person believes that. But it is true the Anti-Defamation League was part and parcel with Black Lives Matter. It is true that some of the largest financiers of left-wing anti-white causes have been Jewish Americans. They went all in on woke, and it wasn't just ADL. It was some of the top Jewish organizations in the country that have done that. In fact, we have seen this with the recent retreat of Jewish donations that are no longer going to be administered to colleges, right? Mark Rowan, Leon Copperman. Can we get that full list? It's very powerful. The part of so that's totally true. And by the way, Tucker Carlson reinforces this. So I'm going to it was quite a day on the internet. Tucker Carlson was interviewing Candace Owens. We have Candace Owens coming up next hour. And Tucker Carlson mentions that Jewish Americans have primarily been financing cultural Marxist ideas. We said this, by the way, last week, and people came after us.
We were on top of it.
We actually said it in a different way. We said, I'm glad that Jewish Americans are reconsidering their financing of cultural Marxism. And people misunderstood it intentionally and slandered us as being anti-Semites. But listen to this. Tucker Carlson is completely correct by saying this, that the philosophical foundation of anti-whiteness has been largely financed by Jewish donors in the country.
And that is true. And then here's the clip he's talking about, the one that I originally tried to play that didn't play very well. Here's that clip.
And Jewish donors, they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do, because Jewish donors have been the number one funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies, cultural institutions, and nonprofits. This is a beast created by secular Jews. And now it's coming for Jews, and they're like, what on earth happened? And it's not just the colleges. It's the nonprofits. It's the movies. It's Hollywood. It's all of it. It's like time for you guys to wake up and say no more. Draw a line in the sand. I don't care if you hate me. And Jewish donors,
so
they have a lot of explaining to do, a lot of decoupling to do.
That's from a year ago, like maybe a year and a half ago. So this is not like ancient history. This is like as far as Charlie Kirk goes, this is in the months leading up to his death, him saying stuff like this. And he actually said a lot of stuff like this. The more after he died, a lot of these, after he was murdered, I should say, a lot of these clips started coming out. So, nobody's going to accuse Charlie Kirk of being an anti-Semite. I think he just recognized facts for what they were and was just calling out what he saw, and he's right. So given that, the facts that he's laid out, and I would say he's above reproach when it comes to anti-Semitism. Nobody's accusing Charlie Kirk of being an anti-Semite, although apparently people were. That's what he said. He said he was being accused of being an anti-Semite by Jewish donors. These Jewish influencers, these Israeli influencers, are really not doing themselves any favors. They're doing like this, we're trolling y'all, we're trying to do tongue in cheek. And it's like, yeah, guys, but Europe is literally being invaded, and has been for decades now. The Jewish lobby, the Israeli lobby are the ones that are being blamed for it. And now you're like openly cheering for this stuff. It's just not a good look. It's just bad, like PR. It's bad management. Like you're not doing yourself any favors. And then you sit there and you're like, why is anti-Semitism on the rise? Why do people suddenly hate Israel? Well, they hate Israel because of this kind of stuff. Like the reason people are turning against the entire movement of Israel and Zionism and whatever is because of this kind of behavior. Like over and over and over and over and over again, Israel does something, or something happens, and then there's this mass movement online of people with like Israeli flags in their name, celebrating it or going against it, whatever it might be, but they're always going against the grain of everybody else. And yeah, I mean, I think people just have a lot of fatigue from that kind of stuff. So this is why those sentiments are on the rise. It's because of this kind of behavior. When Yair Netanyahu, who is the son of Bibi Netanyahu, and both Bibi Netanyahu and Yair Netanyahu 7 years ago are openly calling for Spain to be invaded by Muslims, even if it's a joke, and then Spain gets invaded by Muslims or by Africans, whatever. And then all the Israeli influencers online are celebrating it and like, yeah, this is awesome. Keep going further north. You're not making friends, by the way. Like, you're not making friends in the West. You're not making friends in America. You're not making friends in Europe among like the populist nationalist right when you do shit like that. I mean, the fact that I have to explain that to you like your children is kind of the reason that you're in this predicament in the first place. You're just not very smart. You don't have a lot of social acumen. And, you know, maybe it's like a collective autism. Maybe it's like a collective like Asperger's. Like, I don't know. But there seems to be this like hubris among Israeli culture where generally, and it's not everybody, I think there's plenty of Israelis who get it and are sick of it. It's why a lot of them are leaving. It's like 10% of the country of like people like left the country. I think they see the writing on the wall. They're like, yeah, this is not good. And rather than learning from these mistakes and learning from these missteps, it's like doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down. And I guess let's just jump right into, it wasn't going to be the next topic, but we'll just go ahead and make it the next topic. That'd be Laura Loomer. We've been talking about Laura Loomer, I feel like a lot lately. I've been talking about her a lot. I've been posting about her a lot. And that's because Laura Loomer has become like the number one pro-Ukrainian propagandist. She did the interview with Zelensky. She went and visited Ukraine. Here's the full interview. It's pinned at the top of her X account. This is from a week ago. It's a 45-minute interview. And I've been seeing clips posted of it all week. I think we covered the clip of her on Ukrainian television where she said, "Oh, I'm actually Ukrainian. I just learned that I'm Ukrainian," which of course tracks because, you know, Israel's a Ukrainian colony. I am going to be doing, by the way, tomorrow on the Book of Trump to counter. I don't normally do this. I don't like to do the Book of Trump based on the news cycle. The Book of Trump is a pet project of mine, and it's something that's it's supposed to live outside of the news cycle, because instead of being reactive to the news cycle, which is what this show is, that show is supposed to be more of like, you know, like a history book. That's kind of how it's set up, is to be like a modern history book. But it's timely, and it lines up with like all the other things that I've been doing on that show to do a chapter, an episode on Beletsky, who is the founder of the Azov Battalion, which I was already planning on doing. I was already planning on doing a chapter specifically. I already did the chapter on the Azov Battalion, but I think it makes sense to go deeper and talk about specific figures. Because I think the more specific and granular you can get with a show like that, the more effective it is. The reason that I'm doing it is because she just did an interview with this Beletsky guy, and she posts so much. It's like you got to scroll through all of her stuff to get to it. But she did like a whole like PR campaign with this Beletsky guy. This is the founder of the Azov Battalion, who's like an open Nazi. He's like a neo-Nazi. And she even talks to him about the whole neo-Nazi symbolism and stuff in the Azov Battalion. So here it is. Here's the interview, or here's a clip from the interview. Yeah, and of course they released it like in Ukrainian, they released it like in Hebrew, they released it and she even asks him in the interview. Here it is. It's an hour and 17 minutes. She even asks him, like, can you, like, I think you guys should just get rid of all those neo-Nazi symbols that y'all always wear, like on your, like you're wearing it right now. And he's like, yeah, we'll take another advisement. Like, he's like, yeah, we're not doing that. Like we're keeping our neo-Nazi symbolism. And she's sitting there trying to explain how it's not actually a neo-Nazi symbol, but it most certainly is. And yeah, so we're going to do Beletsky. We're going to do this guy, the founder of the Azov Battalion, who, by the way, was in prison. He was considered a political prisoner by the CIA during the Maidan coup. He was sitting in prison for attacking a separatist leader, a pro-Russian Ukrainian politician. He attacked him physically with a weapon in 2011. He went to prison for many years. He was in prison for 3 years, was sitting in a prison cell when the Maidan coup happens. And then the CIA and Mossad, whatever, liberate him and immediately make him the general of Azov Battalion. And he has been the general of the Azov Battalion ever since, Andrei Beletsky. And now Laura Loomer is like running cover for him and talking about how great he is. Most recently, her most recent like faux pas is, let's just talk about some of her recent faux pas. She's just been running pure anti-Russia, anti-Putin propaganda. And once you start getting into anti-Putin propaganda, anti-Russian propaganda, you're definitely going to get my attention. You're going to get the attention of Badlands for sure, because we speak a lot about that kind of stuff as it already stands. She openly called for Putin to be murdered. She was like, I'm not going to tell President Trump what to do, but if I were him, I certainly would consider murdering Putin. She posted that, I think it was today or yesterday. She got the attention of General Flynn. General Flynn was saying that was very irresponsible and the wrong thing to do. And then she started attacking him and calling General Flynn here she says, General Flynn, with all due respect, thorough records show that you're literally a registered foreign, I think she meant to say a foreign lobbyist being paid over $100,000 a month by foreign governments for lobbying. Yeah, I mean, she's responding to him saying, I will refrain from using my Irish. However, your cause is not America's cause. It is about you and only you. I'm sorry I ever supported you. Read below, please. And that's what he's responding to, is her saying, okay. So he's responding to Colonel Towner Watkins, who's been on this show before, saying clear indication she works for the intelligence agencies, which is also a comment that I made. I made the same comment about she's referring to a Clash Report post where Laura Loomer is, let me see if I can pull up this exact one. It looks like they got rid of that one. But I'm pretty sure the post was they must have deleted it because it was getting too hot, because Loomer and Flynn were like, going back and forth over it. But I'm pretty sure the post was, let me see if I can go through their feed and find it. It was Loomer, I'm pretty sure, calling for the murder of Putin. Let's see. Yeah, so let's just watch a few of these clips. I think that's
where Marco Rubio met with Lavrov in the Philippines, and he showed such disrespect towards the lives of American soldiers and was mocking the questions from American reporters when they asked him about why Russia is supplying Iran with weapons to kill soldiers. And he's like, oh, speak louder. Oh, get a better hairstyle. They should absolutely say fuck the Russians, and they should come to Kyiv, because why would you even want to entertain something like that? They're killing our soldiers. So if I can come here and survive, as an American citizen on my own, I had security, don't get me wrong. Why would Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff not come? They could have a U.S. delegation, U.S. Armed Services. They could have special forces from America come and escort them if they wanted to. I'm sure this is how it works all the time. I'm telling you, I survived. Look, I could get droned on the train tonight, I suppose, right? But I survived, and even with ballistic missiles being rained down on Kyiv, I survived. So, maybe they want to wait a little bit to send President Trump. I don't know. But I don't see why Jared Kushner or Steve Witkoff can't come and have a meeting here.
By the way, her whole presentation in this specific conversation is very creepy. Like, she comes off as like Maria Abramovich right here. She comes off as some sort of like a Jewish witch, like wearing I don't know what that is. It's two triangles interlaced, two equilateral triangles interlaced. It's supposed to be the Star of David, I believe. Last time I checked, according to the Bible, I believe 2 equilateral triangles interlaced is the star of Rimfam. I don't know that definitively, but the star Rimfam is a reference to Saturn, like the god Saturn, like the Israelites who chose to worship Saturn and were punished by God for doing that. And God told them to stop worshiping this star and to stop worshiping Saturn. Well, anyway, I digress. That's the only 6-pointed star, by the way, that's ever mentioned in the Bible. Old Testament or New Testament is the star of Rimfam. And it is described as 2 interlocking triangles, equilateral triangles. And that is exactly what she's wearing around her neck. And so, creepy. Here is the clip of her talking about killing Putin.
Like he's not. But Vladimir Putin knows that Donald Trump is the one who calls the shots. He is. He could have been.
What's going on? Why is this not cooperating? Hold on, let me try to play it again because it would play without me.
Putin is afraid of Donald Trump. He is. He can pretend like he's not. But
by the way, let's just address what she said in that clip. The suggestion seemed to be that Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff are afraid of coming to Ukraine. Lady, I don't know if you know this, but Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have gone to Moscow like countless times and met directly with Putin. They've met directly with Lavrov. She was just commenting on Rubio meeting directly with Lavrov. So her implications seem to be that like there was a fear of coming to Ukraine because the Russians would kill them. That doesn't make any sense. If there's any concern about coming to Ukraine, it's that the Ukrainians would kill them because they're trying to force the Ukrainians into making peace and they don't want to make peace. And I, by the way, would also be worried about that as well. I'm sure Steve Witkoff has been to Ukraine. He is the special envoy to Ukraine now, as if I'm not mistaken. I'm almost positive that Keith Kellogg was originally appointed as the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. And then Russia basically said, yeah, we don't, like, he was going on television and saying Putin was evil and the Russians are terrible. And so at that point, the Russians were like, well, we don't want you representing us anymore because you're obviously biased. And that's when Witkoff was brought in to represent the Russians. So I guess maybe technically General Kellogg is still the special envoy for Ukraine, but Witkoff is the special envoy for the Russians. I'm sure Steve Witkoff has been to Ukraine in the past 2 years. Maybe not, but I believe he probably has. The fact that Loomer is attacking Kushner and Witkoff, I have to keep pointing this out to people because Witkoff and Kushner have been singled out as like, well, they're Jewish, right? So they must be Trump's Jewish handlers. They must be, Trump's a Jewish puppet. Trump's an Israeli puppet, and Witkoff's the handler. Kushner's the handler. If that's the case, then why is Loomer constantly attacking Steve Witkoff? Why is Loomer constantly attacking Jared Kushner? Why are they constantly being attacked by provable pro-Mossad, pro-Israel paid activists, paid propagandists who are always attacking them? And I don't think it's kayfabe. I think they are viciously attacking those two. Kushner and Witkoff are always the ones who are coming up with these ideas in the negotiations that happen to be pro-Muslim, where they're talking about like a $300 billion fund, not funded by the U.S., but funded by others to rebuild Iran, right? I mean, unfreezing the Iranian money, the assets that were seized through sanctions, those were all Kushner's ideas. And so why would Kushner be suggesting that if he was like some sort of an Israeli agent acting against the United States? Doesn't make any sense. So Loomer is full of shit, and she is constantly attacking Trump and she's constantly attacking Trump's people, Kushner, Witkoff, Rubio, others, while also being subversive of Trump's messaging, where Trump is trying to make peace with Putin, and she's out here saying this. Listen to this.
Afraid of. Vladimir Putin is afraid of Donald Trump. He is. He can pretend like he's not. But Vladimir Putin knows that Donald Trump is the one who calls the shots. He is. He could have been way more aggressive towards Vladimir Putin if he wanted to, right? I don't think that,
Do you think he should be?
I mean, look, if I was president of the United States and Russia was supplying Iran with weapons, I would kill Vladimir Putin.
and he has the power to do that. Obviously,
but I mean, obviously, I don't speak for the president. I'm not saying Donald Trump should kill Vladimir Putin. I'm just saying, if I was president of the United States and I found out that another country was lying to my face, and they were supplying a country that I was at war with, a country that is broadcasting 20 times a day on their national state television, kill Trump, death to America, death to Trump. You know, I would find a way for that world leader to tragically pass away from a heart attack. Very afraid of. Vladimir Putin is afraid of Donald Trump. He is. He can protect.
It's like every accusation is a confession. I would find a way to find that world leader pass away from a heart attack. Didn't an important world leader, I mean, I don't know if you'd call him a world leader, but didn't an important politician just pass away from a heart attack? Oh, yeah. Lindsey Graham. We're going to get to that, by the way, the funeral. I would make it look like it was a heart attack. That's a really, really strange. I mean, she said that this was days after Lindsey Graham's funeral. She's saying this. Wow. I think this is let's get back to the reason I'm bringing this up. I think this was the post that Colonel Tanner Watkins was referring to. It was either that one or another one of Loomer, you know, talking smack about Putin. And she says, clear indication she works for the intelligence agencies. I said the same thing. I was like, this is, or I think my post was, we can now be certain that Russia is an enemy of Israel, because if Loomer is saying this, that Putin should be killed, you can be certain that Putin and Russia are an identified enemy of Netanyahu and Israel, because she wouldn't be saying that unless there were people in the Israeli government who wanted that to happen. And so then General Mike Flynn, an intelligence operative or not, he's now quote posting Tanner Watkins. An intelligence operative or not, no one in their right or left mind, it's a nice shot at Loomer, should ever listen to this person again. This is such incredibly dangerous talk during a time of world war. If Laura Loomer has the influence she believes she has and credits herself with, discussing on an international platform the assassination of the leader of a nuclear power is beyond dangerous. America better wake up to the likes of those who scream for war but have no real stake in the consequences of it. Like I said, join the army and see the world, and then maybe, just maybe, you'll know the taste of sacrifice. That then led to Laura Loomer quote posting that post, and then she posts a picture of General Flynn at dinner with Putin. This is from years ago. This is the same picture, by the way, that the left-wing media was using in 2016 to frame Flynn as a Putin puppet, and to say that here's proof that General Flynn was the conduit between Donald Trump and Putin was colluding with Trump, you know, and stealing the 2016 election. And she says, we get it. We know you have a soft spot for Putin, and yet you have nothing bad to say about him providing Iran with weapons and satellite imagery to murder U.S. soldiers in Iran. I assume your six-figure monthly FARA payments would dry up if you said anything critical of Putin, right? And she tags him. And then he responds back, and he says, I will refrain from using my Irish. However, your cause is not America's cause. It is about you and only you. I'm sorry I ever supported you. Read below, please. And then he links to an article from The Hill that says exculpatory Russia evidence about Mike Flynn that U.S. intel kept secret. And so this is the U.S. intelligence community hiding exculpatory evidence that proved Mike Flynn was innocent, and they kept that from the courts. They kept that from the public, and that allowed General Flynn to be dragged through the mud for years and years and years. So he has every right to say that to Laura Loomer. And then, of course, she makes this long post about him being like a foreign asset, like whatever. So yeah, and then she goes on to accuse him of like colluding with other people like Tucker Carlson against Donald Trump. I mean, this woman is absolutely out of her mind, insane. And so then let's see, she says, this is where it gets like real crazy. Then she's going back and forth with all the people. She's going back and forth with like Alex Jones, I think there are a lot of these people who are controlled, in my opinion, by the intelligence community. I think Alex Jones is another one. And just because these people are arguing with one another online does not mean that they're not working for the same people. I think the whole point is to create friction to make it look like they aren't on the same team. It helps build up their credibility. But what Laura Loomer does is she calls for, let me pull up this clip. This one's pretty mind-blowing. Let me see. Right here.
Anti-Semitism.
So this is that from that same interview.
We have so much anti-Semitism in America. And you know what I discovered here, speaking and just opening my eyes, getting on a plane for 12 hours and then taking a train for 15 hours and driving for 8 hours? I learned that anti-Semitism is illegal in Ukraine. Nazism is illegal in Ukraine. If you're caught with Third Reich or swastika or Nazi memorabilia or Nazi regalia, even for so-called historical purposes, you will go to jail. They give you a slap on the wrist one time, they put you in a database so they know that you're an offender, and then they jail you and they arrest you. We don't even have that in the United States. You're allowed to walk around with a swastika if you want in the United States because they say it's free speech. We have so much anti-Semitism. Yeah,
and so then she goes on to basically be like, yeah, isn't it a shame that we don't have that? This is, yeah, it's pretty remarkable. The same arguments that were being used against General Flynn, she's like 10 years ago, she's now using against General Flynn. The exact same framing, the same photographs that they were using printed everywhere in the media, she's now using against Flynn. And now she's talking about anti-Semitism being illegal in Ukraine and how great that is. By the way, one of the first things that the Bolsheviks did when they took over Russia and created the Soviet Union was they outlawed anti-Semitism, made it illegal. It was one of the first things they did because 98% of them were Jewish. So, you know, Laura just buys into these tropes, or not buys in, she falls into these tropes. She is these tropes. She's a walking trope, really, for a lot of this stuff. It's pretty remarkable. And I think the further along we go, the more we're going to see that mask come off. And at some point, she's going to turn on Trump. She'll probably be, in my opinion, one of the last people to do it, because I think that her only saving grace in the eyes of, I wouldn't call it even saving grace. I would say the reason that Trump gives her a wide berth is because she doesn't attack him. He openly said at Mar-a-Lago when she was there, he was like, "Hi, Laura." And he said, "Laura is really nasty." He said that she's a really nasty woman. I think those are the exact words he used, was she's very vicious. She's vicious. She's very nasty. And she is. She's like, the stuff she says is disgusting. She just has like this really nasty disposition. He says, but she's nice to me. So I think Trump gives her a wide berth because she is generally respectful of Trump. Like she leaves him alone. She attacks all of his people. She attacks all of his proxies. She attacks all of his ideas without ever naming him, but she never goes directly for him. I think that's like the golden calf. She won't go for him until she absolutely has to. But when she does, I hope Trump just comes down hard on her like Flynn did, because I think that, but like General Flynn did, because I think it's very critical to call all that out. So with that said, let's transition before we do. Okay, so we're coming up on an hour. Before we break here, let's just real quick just go to the Lindsey Graham. We'll just go ahead and hit it real quick. The Lindsey Graham funeral. I don't really have a ton to say about the Lindsey Graham funeral. You know, I was watching it from afar. Well, I was traveling with my wife this week. So I was watching it from afar, and I saw the people were, I saw it both ways. I saw people say that the flag on the coffin was wrinkled. I saw people say the flag wasn't wrinkled. And of course, what they're referring to is John McCain John McClane, the diehard. No, John McCain, the John McCain funeral where McCain's flag was clearly wrinkled, very clearly wrinkled. Let's see if I can find that picture. And by the way, there seemed to be some confusion on the okay. So this is John McCain's. That's John McCain's flag. That is wrinkled. Like, that's a wrinkled flag. That is not what any other flag looked like. Yeah. The pictures that I saw, it didn't. I mean, this is Lindsey Graham's. His doesn't look like McCain's looked. I mean, people are saying it looks a little wrinkled. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Like, McCain's was over the top wrinkled. The moment it came out, it was wrinkled, and I don't know. I think that one was very in your face. I saw people making the arguments both ways. That just seems like it's confirmation bias one way or the other. That Lindsey Graham was. Maybe he was a deep cover mole, like into the deep state. Maybe he was turned, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the fact that he dies and then now all of a sudden Saudi Arabia is getting their nuclear deal, I don't see that as a coincidence. The fact that he dies and now like Laura Loomer is shilling very hard. Like, she's almost like taken over his role as like the shill for the Ukraine war. I find that really interesting. It's like, oh, well, we don't have Lindsey Graham anymore to shill for Ukraine. Better send Laura Loomer in. That's interesting. But the one thing I will say about Lindsey Graham's funeral was I thought this was interesting. This was Chris Minahan put this together. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I am not sharing my screen. So Chris Minahan put this together. This is a good little 40-second clip.
He was extremely hawkish. I will tell you, he never saw a war that he didn't like. Only his true friends would understand that, but he wanted it for the good of our country.
Lindsey, he was often unfairly characterized as a warmonger. I've heard that false criticism a lot. It's not true. The truth was the opposite. Lindsey desperately wanted and talked to the president about a lasting peace in the Middle East. He wanted every region, every country in the region on that path to peace. That was Lindsey's dream. If people would only listen to what he had been saying.
He was extremely
hawkish.
So
apparently, I didn't watch Lindsey Graham's funeral, so I don't know. I saw the clips. It's not something I really need to like watch. I don't feel like. Anyway, as I understand it, Trump spoke and then Hannity spoke like right after Trump. So it's like Trump definitely spoke before Hannity. I don't know if it was that direct sequence, but Trump got up and made the joke about him being a war hawk, and then Hannity jumps up and says he was unfairly characterized as dude, the guy was a war hawk. There was nobody who was a bigger shill for war, like a more shameless shill for wars than Lindsey Graham. And you could read that either way. You could read that as he was in earnest war hawk, or that maybe he was a cartoon character, who was doing it to a level where it makes it like he's laying it on a little too thick. I'm open to all those interpretations. I'm at a point now where I don't give anybody that kind of grace. I mean, President Trump has all of the has a very wide berth to do because he is running a psychological warfare operation. But I don't extend that to everyone else around him because I feel like that just gets too sticky. And then it's like then you're just excusing behavior. Like Laura Loomer doing what she's doing in Ukraine. Yeah, like it's very cartoonish, and you can make the argument that her doing that makes it so obvious that she must be an intelligence asset that like it makes people talk about that. But I also think at the same time, aren't you giving her a little aren't you giving her a little too much latitude to lie? Like, if you think that she's lying about her position on Ukraine, that this is just this epiphany is like totally dishonest and disingenuous, which is what most people believe. I mean, it's a pretty easy like take on that. Aren't you just excusing dishonesty and just like oh yeah, well, it's totally cool for people to lie because this is a psychological warfare operation and everyone's in on it. So we should all be lying to our friends and family because 5th generation warfare. I think that's nonsense. If you're lying to your friends and your family about like what's happening in politics because you think that lying to them is for their best interest, then that's just like a degenerate mindset to be in. You should be telling your family, your friends and family who are willing to listen, the truth. I mean, I understand like you don't want to go talk about politics with people who don't want to talk about politics. I would say pick your battles. Less is always more. That's my advice. But if you're already having a conversation with someone about something, like don't tell them that elections are totally legit if you believe that elections are fake. Like, you're not doing anybody any favors if you're not talking about that stuff in an honest. If you're not being honest about how you actually feel, you're just perpetuating the problem. So anyway, all right. So with that said, we're at a little over an hour. So let's just go ahead and, we'll take a little break here. All right. We'll be back here in a minute. This is Geopolitics the Ghost. In a minute.
We can't stop for snacks, dude. We have to deliver all of these soft disclosure gift cards.
He goes by Zach Kane.
The motion detector.
Fighting over the beer brush.
Life finds a way.
Hydrate your elbows. Moisturize your soul. Feel the rhythm together. You feel alive and let the lotion roll. Soft disclosure. Hear the cry. Maximum softness. Do or die.
Muffin, hit it.
Tired of nicotine pouches drier than your ex's texts? Meet Alp, the moist flavor bomb pouches that actually deliver. While the other guys taste like grandma's dusty tea bag, Alp hits you with bold flavors and 20 pouches per 10. That's 5 extra hits of satisfaction. 3 milligrams for chill mode, up to 12 milligrams for I just saw the group chat energy. Alp, because your lip deserves better than the desert. Grab yours at badlandsmedia.tv/Alp. Use code Badlands for 10% off and finally have a better time. That's badlandsmedia.tv/Alp. Code word Badlands. Make self-care great again this summer with All Good by Jessica Storm. Head outside with All Good's Bug Out Balm, full of citronella, eucalyptus, and lavender oils to naturally repel the critters, and tallow sunscreen with non-nano zinc oxide for natural sun protection. No mystery ingredients like in so many commercial products, just 100% clean, organic ingredients with purpose. And if sun has your hair feeling a little dry, show it some extra love with the Tallow Hair Mask, a customer favorite for softer, healthier hair just after just one use. Everything is handcrafted in small batches by Jessica in Florida with quality and simplicity at the heart of it all. Head over to badlandsmedia.tv/allgood and use promo code Badlands to discount your entire purchase and support the creators at Badlands Media. And check out episode 10 on America First Stories on the Badlands Media platform. All right, welcome back to the second part 2 of Geopolitics with Ghost. This basically called, I'm not really going to call it a bonus episode because I don't know when the next time we're going to be able to do this is. We'll try to keep it to the normal schedule if we can, but like the Tuesdays, Fridays, 2 p.m. But no guarantee that I'm going to be able to record on Monday night, Thursday night, which is what it would take to do that. So TBD on schedule moving forward. With that said, let's get back into it. So we were talking about Loomer and the Russian PSYOP, or the PSYOP against Russia and Putin. I did just see this happen. I mean, today's Sunday when this is going to be airing. And I want to talk about this terrorist attack in Moscow. Before I do, I'll just pull up this other post too, where she's just keeps going hard at Flynn, at General Flynn. She says, I hate to admit this, but the Democrats were not wrong about some of the so-called conservative operatives they accused of being foreign agents. They were, however, very wrong about President Trump being a Russian asset, and they created Russia fatigue in America. Now we have Russian influence operations running wild all over the place. If I can admit I was wrong about Ukraine, how come the Democrats can't admit they lied about Russiagate to get Trump? They weren't so wrong about General Flynn, but they were wrong about Trump. Why can't they admit that? Yeah. Well, how long until they accuse Badlands Media of being a Russian propaganda outlet? Probably not very long, I assume. But you know what? Bring it on. Like, bring it on. Yeah, it's just, these people are shameless. Okay, so the thing I was talking about was this. It says, today, Ukraine managed to blow up 2 Russian generals in the heart of Moscow during a birthday celebration. And the post says, good job, lads. This is Richard Woodruff, who's a British volunteer supporting Ukraine since 2022. 133,000 followers on X. So I guess he's like a British operator who's went and fought in Ukraine. Probably in the Azov Battalion, let's be honest. Celebrating because there was a terrorist attack in Moscow against 2 Russian generals who were having dinner at a restaurant, I guess for a birthday celebration, it sounds like, and they were killed in a bombing. And now you have like uniparty shills celebrating this and being like, oh yeah, this is totally cool. Like, so apparently terrorism is okay sometimes. Like, it's okay sometimes for terrorists as long as they're killing the right people. And here's the article on that from RT. Bomb attack kills 3 at Moscow restaurant, according to the Anti-Terrorism Committee. 21 others were wounded, while the security guard who stopped the suspected bomber from entering the venue died in the blast. And improvised, so it sounds like it was 2 generals and this security guard were killed. An improvised explosive device has killed 3 people and wounded 21 others at a restaurant in central Moscow. Russia's National Anti-Terrorism Committee has said the explosion struck the Balzy Rossi Italian restaurant near Kudrinsk Kudrinskaya Square at around 7:55 p.m. on Saturday, according to the NAC. An unidentified woman attempted to carry a homemade explosive device into the restaurant, but was stopped at the entrance by a security guard. It was this woman, by the way, that she looked like Laura Loomer. Just kidding. Just kidding. The woman and the guard were killed in the explosion, along with one of the restaurant's patrons. The wounded sustained injuries of varying severity and were receiving medical assistance, officials said. Witnesses described a powerful blast followed by scenes of panic as bloodied patrons fled the building. I ran out onto the street. It was a quote. I ran out onto the street and saw people rushing out of the area in their best clothes and women running barefoot. They were holding their shoes in their hands. Men were supporting them. So it sounds like this is like a nice restaurant. I mean, it looks like a nice restaurant in the pictures. So this is like a nice restaurant. Says videos from the scene showed police officers and members of Russia's National Guard service cordoning off the surrounding streets as firefighters and medical personnel work at the site. So then here is another here's some other articles about this from RT's like podcasts or news shows or whatever. So this is from an ex-Pentagon analyst, and this guy's name is Malouf. So Michael Malouf, former Pentagon analyst, he says this attack is the very definition of terrorism. The attack was designed to kill as many people as possible. He said, quote, if it weren't for that guard who was unfortunately killed, there probably could have been a mass slaughter in that restaurant and in the surrounding area. And then you have another appearance from a different guy. This is a former U.S. officer. He says, we know exactly who's behind the Moscow bombing. Western intelligence agencies and their Ukrainian proxies were likely involved in the deadly bombing at a central Moscow restaurant. Former U.S. officer Stanislav Krapivnik believes Russian authorities have not publicly identified any organization or foreign government as responsible for the attack, and no group has yet claimed responsibility. Investigators have also yet to announce a suspected motive for the improvised explosive device attack, which killed 3 people and wounded 21 on Saturday. So we don't know officially. Okay, so and the quote is, while officially nobody's taking credit for doing this, we know who's behind this. We know exactly who's behind this. He said, in Russian folk myth, in Eastern Slavic folk myth, there's a 3-headed dragon. In this case, that 3-headed dragon is the CIA, MI6, and Mossad. They are neck deep in Ukraine. They're neck deep in this conflict. They have been since 2014 and earlier. They recreated the SBU into a terrorist organization. They use them as proxies to commit terrorist acts, and they go after Russian officials, as many as they can. So this guy is saying Russian official. I mean, he didn't say that these people were Russian officials, but he's saying that they go after Russian officials. I don't know that we actually have confirmation. I don't see any confirmation anywhere of that these were generals who were killed. Only that one guy said, oh yeah, these 2 generals were killed. If that turns out to be true, then I think we can say that this Woodruff guy on X is probably connected to CIA. I mean, if he says that 2 Russian generals were killed in this restaurant attack and no official sources have even said that these guys were military officers or anything like that. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at TASS right now, TASS, the Russian news agency. This is, again, the closest you get, from what I understand, to like Russian state media. This is even closer than RT. This is like directly from Putin's officer, the Kremlin, like tied to them. They aren't saying anything. Yeah, they like they aren't saying anything about these people being military officers or anything like that. So if they do turn out to be military officers, if they turn out to be generals, that Woodruff guy should definitely be investigated for sure. Okay, let me see if I have anything else on Ukraine. I don't know if I have a few other things. So Ukrainian commander ordered troops to shoot deserters on sight. A second frontline unit linked to a former top general has been accused of mass abuse of his own soldiers. This isn't the first time we've seen articles like this. Impossible to know if they're true or not, but this is just what defectors are saying. So this is coming from the Ukrainian commander instructed squad leaders to open fire on soldiers attempting to flee their positions, according to an audio recording cited in a new media investigation into an alleged abuse on the conflict front line. The report published on Thursday by the Western Grant funded outlet texty.org.ua focuses on the 225th Separate Assault Regiment. The unit reportedly ranks second in the number of complaints filed by soldiers, behind only the 425th Separate Assault Regiment, noted as the Scalia, which became the subject of a formal investigation following a similar expose in late June. The recording reportedly captures the commander of the 225th Regiment, Major Oleg Shiryev, telling subordinates that anything that moves without authorization should be treated as an enemy. Quote, anyone who flees their position, deserters, they are the enemy too, the officer reportedly said, adding that there is no such thing as our guys. The investigation was based on interviews with current and former members of the regiment, including soldiers who had deserted, as well as troops from the units deployed near the 225th, the outlet said. Their testimony allegedly points to systematic mistreatment intended to enforce discipline among rank and file service members. Yeah, and this goes on to give more details to that. Let's see. So that's just kind of more of the same, in my opinion. This one's interesting. We talked about Italy earlier. Mafia buying up some 800,000 weapons missing from Ukraine, according to Italian prosecutors. So it says the Italian mafia is seeking to buy up to 800,000 firearms reportedly missing from or stolen from Ukraine since 2022, including drones and other advanced arms. Senior prosecutors have warned. Says some 780,465 items sent to Ukraine have reportedly disappeared since the escalation of the conflict, including around 149,000 during the first 5 months of 2026. The Il Fatto Quotidiano newspaper reported on Wednesday that much of the arsenal consisted of European military supplies intended for Kiev. And it says the weapons have since reportedly ended up in the European black market and are now said to have attracted the attention of Cosa Nostra, the Sicilian mafia, which would like to upgrade its arsenal with military-grade systems. Palermo Chief Prosecutor Mauricio De Lucia told Italy's Parliamentary Anti-Mafia Commission this week that the criminal organization was trying to build a quality arsenal and has already obtained access to AK-47 rifles and powerful explosives. Yeah, so this is just more of the same again. It's like Ukraine being tied into like international organized crime syndicates. Yeah, I mean we've been seeing this. This is a pattern. This just very much follows a pattern. Okay, and then was there one more? I thought there might have been one more. Ukraine. Yeah, here it is. Okay. Before I go to that one, I'll just show you this headline. We already talked about this, but here's from RT. Ukrainian neo-Nazi commander struggles to explain SS-style insignia to MAGA influencer. It says Laura Loomer confronted infamous Azov Battalion founder Andrei Belitsky about its members wearing a swastika. The commander of the notorious Ukrainian neo-Nazi Azov Battalion or Azov unit, Andrei White Leader Beletsky, struggled to explain its SS-style insignia in an interview with American influencer Laura Loomer, eventually resorting to a comparison between Adolf Hitler and eating with a fork. This week, Loomer has cultivated close ties to U.S. President Donald Trump's MAGA movement, was on a PR tour of Ukraine, which she insists doesn't have a neo-Nazi problem. However, she confronted Belitsky about his unit members wearing a swastika, carrying swastika flags, doing Hitler salutes, what she described as a bizarre practice. She also pointed to Azov's insignia, describing it as identical to the Nazi Germany logos worn by SS agents. The emblem is the exact copy of the Wolf's Angel rune used by several Nazi military formations, including the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich. Belitsky acknowledged that the insignia was rather controversial because of its resemblance to Nazi symbols, but insisted that it was a historical monogram representing the idea of the nation, and claimed that it had been used by some aristocratic and Cossack families since the 16th century. He maintained that Azov had adopted the symbol because of the tradition rather than a desire to imitate the SS. No known evidence confirms this claim. Banners and standards used by the Cossacks were traditionally adorned with Orthodox crosses, depictions of Christ and saints, and had Cyrillic rather than Latin letters. Bolitsky then tried to downplay the issue by comparing the use of SS-style symbolism to eating with a fork. Should we see nothing but offensive triggers in everything? Hitler ate with a fork and was a vegetarian. That doesn't make forks or vegetarianism bad things, he said, adding that his unit's symbolism should be approached more cautiously. He also claimed that Azov did not commit a single hate crime and that Ukraine had a low level of xenophobic manifestations in general. Yeah, that's actually BS. Even Congress and the U.S. government have classified Azov as a Nazi or as a terrorist organization, which is probably why Azov was formerly folded into the Ukrainian military, probably to deal with that. Anyway, we'll get more into that on the Book of Trump. Bolitsky, he's a fascinating figure. Okay, this is the one that I wanted to get to, though. Ukraine committing piracy, according to the Rosatom CEO. So we talk about Rosatom all the time. Like, this is the company, the nuclear energy agency that's connected, or company that's connected to the Russian government, that is building the nuclear power plants all over the world. So this, a Russian civilian ship recently attacked by drones was carrying frozen food and construction materials. Alexei Likachev has said. Rosatom CEO Alexei Likachev has accused Ukraine of piracy after a civilian container ship belonging to the Russian State Nuclear Corporation was sunk by a Ukrainian drone strike. The MV Yanina, a freighter belonging to the Rosatom subsidiary Fesco, was attacked by 2 Ukrainian drones about 130 miles off the Russian Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. Livachev said in a press statement on Saturday, quote, "It was a perfectly ordinary, peaceful container ship sailing in international waters and carrying civilian goods ranging from frozen foods to construction and finishing materials," he said. Such an attack can only be characterized as piracy and maritime banditry. Yeah, so that's, again, more of the same. We've been seeing stories like this all the time. Okay, so let's now shift to the Middle East. Now, since we already were talking about Israel, we already were talking about Laura Loomer, I'll just start with Israel and then we'll get to like the cool connections that I'm seeing here with the Middle East. Now, we're transitioning from Ukraine to Israel. At the same time, we should acknowledge that we did have meetings at the White House this week on Tuesday, and the 2 people who came to the White House to meet with President Trump were Zelensky and Netanyahu. It is not a coincidence at all in my mind that Zelensky and Netanyahu were at the White House on the same day. Of course, they were there because they were attending Lindsey Graham's funeral. That's what put them in the city at the same time. But the fact that Trump only met with 2 foreign leaders that day, and the 2 that he met with were those 2, that's not at all lost on me, as a coincidence. Here is a video that kind of went viral of these 2 speaking at Lindsey Graham's funeral. They're not notoriously known for getting along. I can't tell if this guy, this might just be a bad lip reading. I don't know. You can't tell what they're saying, obviously, but I mean, the reports are that Netanyahu doesn't like Zelensky. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't seen concrete evidence of that. They seem to be getting along right here. Netanyahu seems to be the one engaging Zelensky. Zelensky seems to be the one, if anything, trying to walk away from Netanyahu. He probably recognizes that Netanyahu is damaged goods. And I mean, Zelensky hasn't exactly been Mr. Popular lately. So he's probably like, yeah, dude, probably shouldn't be getting pictures taken together of us. Anyway. So they both go to the White House. We don't get any reports, okay, like of what they talked about, really. I mean, we get very loose reports of what, generally speaking, was discussed, but nothing concrete, nothing like we normally what would happen is that Netanyahu's office or maybe even the White House, I mean, if they didn't hold a press conference where Trump comes out and Trump's like, all right, here's what we're talking about, here's what we're doing, you know, he would bring the press in, they would sit there and talk in the Oval Office, or maybe they go up to a podium afterwards and kind of announce, here are the things that we were discussing, here's the trade agreements, here's the bilateral agreements, whatever it is. None of that happened. Netanyahu's office didn't put out like a formal statement. All that they said was they came out and said that it was Netanyahu said it was one of the best, most productive meetings he's ever had with Trump, which that's just like you would expect him to say something like that in that situation. That means absolutely nothing. The fact that nothing specific was really reported kind of indicates that nothing of substance really came up. I mean, it probably really was just them being like, we're in town in DC, and they probably had plenty of stuff they wanted to discuss, but Trump was probably just like, yeah, whatever, cool, okay, yeah, sweet, awesome, cool, nice to see you, yeah, all right, see you later, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But there were some developments that I think are worth discussing. And so one of them is let's see, Trump coming out and saying that where is it? Trump came out and said he kind of like threw some shade at Netanyahu right before the here it is. Right before the meeting, Trump kind of came out and threw cold water on Netanyahu, and he said, because Netanyahu had made some comment again about the F-35s, and I think the exact, hold on one second. Okay, this is what I was looking for. Okay, so this is what day is this from? This is from Monday. So this is from right before the night before the meeting. So he's asked about the whole F-35 Turkey thing.
Prime Minister Netanyahu opposes sending F-35s to Turkey. Are you going to tell him?
Look, Turkey's been a great ally for me. You know, I think he's done a very good job. Did a good job with Syria. He's a friend of mine, and nobody tells me what we should be selling and not. Turkey has been a tremendous ally for me. It was up to Turkey. Turkey's not a big fan of Israel. You know that, right? And not a big fan of Bibi. But he is. They've been great for me. Turkey has been great. Very powerful country, by the way. Tremendous military. Very big military. Very powerful military. Has a lot of great equipment.
Prime Minister Netanyahu opposes sending F-35s to Turkey. Are you going to?
Yeah, so I should note that we did get this development. Is that from this week? I guess technically it's from last month, but yeah, Al-Shara ruled out going after Hezbollah. So that indicates it's not going after Hezbollah. I guess that's an old story, but anyway. This is an interesting replay. We got a few replays this week, by the way. We got a few replays this week because now, granted, this was the journalist asking Trump the question. He framed it as like, what about Netanyahu? Because Netanyahu once again came in and said, yeah, we don't want F-35s going to Turkey. And then Trump kind of pushed back. So Trump got set up for the question about Turkey. Trump pushes back and says, well, Turkey's been a great ally for me. And you know what? Turkey doesn't like Israel. They don't like Netanyahu. So that he was throwing shade at Netanyahu right there. But this is a replay of what happened last September. I've told this story many times over the past month or whatever. It's 5 weeks that the day before Netanyahu was supposed to speak at the UN, it was supposed to be on a Friday. It was on a Friday. He tried to invite himself to the White House, and instead Trump invited Erdogan. That's when he gave him the nuclear deal. That's when he said he was probably going to give him the F-35s. And then Netanyahu had to go give a speech the next day with very low energy because Trump had just given Turkey all that stuff. And then when Netanyahu showed up for his meeting with Trump the following Monday, Trump had the 20-point Gaza peace plan. And we're about to get this other replay in a second. I'll pull that up. But that's when Trump said, oh, yeah, we got the 20-point Gaza peace plan. And we're going to set up this thing called the Board of Peace. How about that? So now with Netanyahu about to come back and force himself back into the White House again, according to reports from Trump's people, Trump now once again invokes Turkey. He is asked about Turkey specifically, but he invokes Turkey. He invokes the F-35s. He talked about how he loves Erdogan, and Erdogan and him get along great. I just find that really interesting that is brought up again. Now, on top of that, we also get, but yeah, I mean, if you needed more evidence that Zelensky and that the Israel-Ukraine war are one and the same, I mean, if Laura Loomer hasn't made it obvious that she's merging those two wars in the public's mind, we now can see it because Trump is now, Trump is like, the fact that they're both coming in there on the same exact day. Okay, so we also get, here's like, speaking of replays, here is Donald Trump comes out and he says that they now have an agreement. This is like right after, this is on July 30th, this is Wednesday, so this is the day after, or this is Thursday rather. So this is like 2 days after Netanyahu comes and visits. We get from Trump the claim that Hamas has accepted the peace deal. We get the claim that so the first time that Netanyahu forces himself into the White House is September of 2025. When he shows up on that Monday, Trump has the 20-point Gaza peace plan in hand, and Trump puts that in Netanyahu's face, and he says, the big part of like the biggest thing to come out of the 20-point peace plan really was this announcement of this Board of Peace, right, which is going to be run by the Muslims, which is going to basically establish, like, Trump is going to be the head of it, but the Muslims are going to be the boots on the ground. They're going to be the ones running it. And now we get this announcement. So this is Trump posting on True Social saying, today the Board of Peace reached a historic agreement for the complete disarmament of Hamas and all other armed groups in Gaza. And then he just goes on to talk about, the monumental step towards peace and security. He says this is a major milestone in the implementation of the 20-point Trump peace plan. The agreement will be carried out in carefully structured phases. A disarmament is complete. As disarmament is completed, Israeli forces will withdraw, and the International Stabilization Force will work with a new Palestinian police force to take responsibility for Gaza being safe for its residents and its neighbors. And then he, under this agreement, Gaza will finally be in the hands of a new Palestinian government that serves its people. Congratulations to all on this amazing development that everybody said could never be achieved. Now, what's funny about this, I mean, RT is reporting it that Hamas has accepted this. I assume they have. I mean, if Trump's putting this out, I assume they have. What's funny about this, though, is literally word for word, this is pretty much just a repeat of what was announced in September. Because remember, in September of last year, okay, so it does say in this RT article, it says, Ghazi Hamad, a member of the Hamas negotiating delegation, confirmed to Al Jazeera on Friday that an agreement has been reached, adding that an official statement will be released soon. Quote, these negotiations were difficult and hard, and we tried to reach the best possible formula that was achievable. Hamad, whose remarks were carried by Reuters and the BBC, was cited as saying, he stressed, however, that Israel must approve the phased disarmament, adding that Hamas will not implement any part of the agreement unless Israeli forces fulfill their obligations, particularly withdrawing from Gaza and advancing reconstruction in the Palestinian territory. So Israel still has the opportunity to mess this all up, which they probably will. Which they already have, frankly. And Yeah, but this is a like word for word replay of what happened in September, because the big difference being that in September, because remember, Hamas had to agree to all that. We had the big signing in Egypt at that big meeting. The big difference is that the first time the 20-point peace plan is rolled out, and that creates the board of peace. This time, it's like the board of peace is the one brokering the agreement. So rather than it just being Trump and his Muslim allies coming together with Hamas to announce this agreement, now it's the board of peace, this thing that was created from that first announcement, that it's actually the agent of peace, the one that's brokering the agreement. But it also kind of feels like we're just getting a replay of something that already was announced months ago. I understand that this probably has a lot more meat to it. This is probably a lot more concrete, whereas before maybe it was more conceptual. However, the fact that this is just announced like 2 days after Netanyahu shows up at the White House or forced himself into the White House is not lost on me. Like, this feels like this is Trump like twisting the knife on Netanyahu, being like, oh, you thought you were going to come to the White House and walk away with like a PR win. Actually, here's what you get. You get more board of peace. You get more Hamas cooperation. Now this results in this. We get wait, what happened to that? Well, I had it looks like they changed the headline on Times of Israel, but the TLDR is that Israel attacked Gaza. So Israel like opened up on Gaza, like right after this thing gets announced. All of a sudden, Israel's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna bomb the hell out of Gaza now," and it's like, okay, well, I guess y'all are not gonna do like a withdrawal. Let's see, where is okay, so the original like headline on this was it like Israel bombs Gaza like right after Trump announces peace deal with Hamas. Now they've changed the headline to say, because this is like a live blog that they will just go in and update. They changed it now to IDF says it killed Hamas cell leader who invaded near Os on October 7th. So of course now they're changing it to be like, well, there's a legitimate reason that we went and bombed Gaza right after President Trump said he made a deal with Hamas. It says a Hamas terrorist who invaded the kibbutz near Os during October 7th onslaught was killed in an Israeli strike in the southern Gaza Strip yesterday. Military announces the strike killed Salim Jamal Abdin al-Rahman Abu Labad, head of a cell in Hamas's elite Nukba force, who infiltrated near Oz on October 7th, according to the IDF. Yeah, so I mean, this feels very subversive to Trump. Like, President Trump announces that he has a deal, and now, of course, they're just going to go kill more people, like kill Hamas leaders. I'm pretty sure the whole point of like a negotiated deal is that you're not going to kill any more people in the opposing army. It doesn't matter who they are. But my guess is that this is not going to derail Trump's plans, but it certainly feels like that's what was happening here. And then we get this story. It says Trump says he and Israel, because remember, they've been blustering. I never talk about this stuff because I just feel like it changes every 8 hours. So it just seems like it's kind of like a waste of energy to spin the wheels. But the talk has been there's going to be a huge attack. Trump's mulling over yet another huge attack on Iran. And of course, like as is tradition, Trump says he and Israel have called off Iran attack after being assured a deal is imminent. And then that's here's the headline for that. If I'm sharing the right screen. I think I am. Yes, now I'm sharing the right screen. And then this was just published like less than an hour ago. It says Iran's Arakchi agreed to deal opening Hormuz, leading Trump to cancel the attack. So apparently Arakchi agreed to a deal that is opening. This is Abbas Arakchi, and that this is now going to cancel the attack. Okay, so let me explain what I think is happening here with Israel, and then we'll get into like the cool stuff that I'm noticing that happened this week with the Muslims before we get out of here. So I think what I've realized is happening is that the playbook that was run against the Muslims in the 80s, I've talked about this before, that in 1979 we had the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And then that coincided with, at the same time, the Muslim Brotherhood taking over Mecca, that's in Saudi Arabia, and accusing the Saudi royal family of being puppets of the West and that they were fake Islam. This was the Ayatollah. This is funny because the Muslim Brotherhood is supposed to be Sunni. You know, the Ayatollah and the Iranians are all Shia. The Ayatollah and the Muslim Brotherhood were saying the exact same thing at the exact same time. And again, the Ayatollah and the Muslim Brotherhood, all that kind of runs back to British intelligence. They were all saying that the Saudis were fake, that they were all puppets of the West. And so that provoked the Saudis into being like, no, we are actually real Orthodox. Like, we are the true Islamic keepers of the faith. And that led to both sides radicalizing their society and like this ideological arms race. And that caused the Middle East to become very, very radicalized in the 80s. You know, women losing the rights to do all the stuff that they were allowed to do before, like go to college and work and drive and all that stuff. I think what is happening now in Israel is that that same playbook is being run against the Israelis. Because when you look at what Benjamin Netanyahu represents, he is a chaos agent. And this goes into like what Chris Paul says when he talks about our boy Yuhu. Now, Chris and I might have differing opinions. I'm not going to speak for Chris, but many of you have heard some of his musings on this. And I think a lot of it is very spot on, and he could 100% be right. I think that there's a lot of merit to what he says. That Netanyahu basically knows exactly what he's doing, that he's intentionally destroying Israel. If you go and you watch the BB files, which I finally got to watch, I only had seen clips of it, but I finally got to watch it on the plane during my trip this week in its entirety. It pretty much like affirms all the stuff I've been talking about for 3 years. What it is it's like actual clips. It's leaked footage from all the police investigations where they went and they interviewed all of these people. Like, they bring them into a room and you're basically watching the CCTV footage of these interviews. And these are like the Adelsons, like Sheldon Adelson, his wife Miriam, people from Netanyahu's like staff. A lot of them are no longer think well of Netanyahu, so they've all turned on him. These are Arnon Milchan, who's like one of the biggest Hollywood producers ever, like movie producers, like so many movies that you know of that are very, very famous. He's won like Academy Awards. He also happens to be the guy who helped allegedly, well, actually he bragged about it a couple of years ago in a podcast during the Obama administration. He's the one who helped steal all the nuclear material from the U.S. so that Israel could build a nuclear warhead. This was decades ago. This is like when he was in his 20s. He's like in his 60s now. So all of these people are like on film now, both talking to the police, being interrogated, but then also like interviewing with the documentary like filmmaker. You also have like former Israeli prime ministers. A lot of these guys are enemies of Netanyahu, but they're all talking about Netanyahu, and they're talking about, they get towards the end of the film talking about how Netanyahu in his desperation has been forced to pivot away from the center, like the moderates who have all turned on him, into like these radical crazies. They start talking about Ben Gvir. They talk about Smotrich. These are guys that we've obviously spoke about many times on my shows on Badlands. So whether or not Netanyahu is Trump's guy, like he's in on it, or this is all just game theory, and that's where I tend to lean towards, that this is all just game theory. What we can say is that Netanyahu is a chaos agent. He is coming in and totally disrupting the Israeli political spectrum, the status quo in Israel. And that's what all these people in this film are talking about. They're all talking about how he's coming in and creating, the changes that he wants to make to the judiciary. And I've been saying this for years. They're designed to allow him to install his own guys onto the Supreme Court so that when his court cases are heard, when they're heard by like the Supreme Court on appeal, like when he gets convicted and then he appeals to the Supreme Court, his convictions will be heard. His appeals will be heard by judges that he himself appoints. So there's a clear conflict of interest. What they also point out in the film, and they're definitely right about this, is the overlapping interests here, because while Netanyahu's interest in the Supreme Court judiciary overhaul is about his prosecutions and getting those overturned, Smotrich and Ben Gvir, their interest in the judicial overhaul is that they see the Supreme Court as like the one thing but standing between them and Greater Israel, that the Supreme Court could overrule the things that they want to do to create Greater Israel. So they see tearing down the Supreme Court, which is effectively what Netanyahu, in the eyes of many, has been trying to do by stacking the court with more judges. They see that as a good thing. So they're helping Netanyahu do that. They're helping him try to tear down the Supreme Court effectively by stacking the court with more judges, which they have not been successful in trying to do yet, but they're still trying to do it. All this is really fascinating because the net effect of what Netanyahu's done by bringing in, as they describe in the film, he's lost the center. He's lost the center left, right? So whereas before he had to appeal to some extent in order to get these other parties, because we're talking about a multi-party system where you have to get different factions to support you as prime minister to stay in office. Whereas before he had to win the support and maintain the support of these center-left groups. Once those people abandoned him, they were playing video clips of him speaking as campaigning in Israel for office. And he's like, we can finally build the right-wing government that we've always wanted because we don't need to appeal to these leftists. We just have everyone on the right now supporting us because now we have this faction. He's not saying this, but this is what's being communicated. We now have this faction of the furthest right that we've never had in Israeli politics, not recently anyway. And because we have these guys, we don't need the left, which means we can just go even further right in the government we're going to create. The net effect of that is that has now provoked the Likud party, members of the Likud party, to a large extent, or members of groups that would normally be totally aligned with the Likud party, like guys from the Likud party who are Netanyahu's party, have left the Likud party and joined other political parties, but they haven't changed their politics. They're basically just we have no power in the Likud party and we see Netanyahu as a problem. Our ideas haven't really changed. It's just that we just need a different vehicle to get us there. And so, and Naftali Bennett doesn't fall into this category. He wasn't Likud. But the net effect is that now you have, instead of the competition in Israel being between the center right and the center left, as you have had in the United States for a long time, now the competition in terms of winning the public mandate and public support is now between the quote unquote extreme right, which is the Smotrichs and the Ben Gvirs, and the conventional right, which is the Naftali Bennetts. But in order for Naftali Bennett to steal the support base of Netanyahu, which he needs to do. He basically has to out Netanyahu. And the only way to do that is to really be the war hawk that Netanyahu already has always been. So he has to champion the cause of war, and he has to champion military campaigns the same way Netanyahu champions them in order to kind of like rug pull Netanyahu and steal his thunder. So that means you have two different sides that are basically like, just like the Muslims were in the 80s. They're like, no. I'm the most orthodox Islam. Like, we're not going to let women drive anymore. Oh, yeah? Well, we're not going to let women go to cafes. Oh, yeah? We're not going to have movie theaters. Oh, yeah? Well, we're not going to let women speak to men in public. Now you have Naftali Bennett and Netanyahu doing the exact same thing. Oh, yeah? Well, we're going to have war with Iran. Oh, yeah? Well, we're not going to let a Palestinian state exist. Oh, yeah? Well, we're not going to speak to Qatar anymore. Oh, yeah? Well, we're going to cut off a relationship with Turkey. I mean, that's like the direction we're heading in. I'm not saying that stuff has happened yet, but I'm saying that you've heard Naftali Bennett say in the past few months, Turkey is the next Iran. Turkey is a big problem. You've heard them say that Lebanon and Syria are a big problem. You've heard them say that, Naftali Bennett, whereas maybe 2 years ago, he was like, we can't have war with Palestine. We need to fix this whole thing with October 7th. We need to fix this. We need to sign the two-state solution. That's what Benny Gantz was saying 8 years ago. Let's just sign the two-state solution, get it done with, and then we can move on onto a different subject. We can focus on Iran if we have Palestine wrapped up. That's what Benny Gantz told Trump in 2018. And Trump was like, oh, yeah, I like Benny Gantz. I thought he was going to do a two-state solution. I think you'd have peace with Palestine if we got Benny Gantz. Now Naftali Bennett is saying, well, we're not going to have Palestine. Palestine belongs to Israel. There's not going to be a Palestinian state. Like there's no discussion to be had there. Palestine doesn't exist. There is no such thing as Palestine. Next question. And then, of course, Naftali Bennett says that Turkey is a bigger threat. Turkey is the next Iran. We need to be prepared for a conflict with Turkey. Now we have this. Naftali Bennett. Bennett says Qatar, a more dangerous enemy to Israel than Iran right now. In an interview, ex-prime minister, because he was the prime minister for 6 months in 2022, before Netanyahu cut the deal with Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and took the power back, ex-prime minister again vows to declare Doha an enemy state for funding Hamas. Al Jazeera, alleged influence in Netanyahu's office, says his life's mission is to replace Israel's current government. Former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett described Qatar as more dangerous to Israel at the moment than Iran during an interview aired Saturday, while again vowing to declare the Gulf Emirate an enemy state if elected into government later this year. Speaking to Channel 12's Meet the Press, the Together Party leader explained his reasoning, saying that with Iran, everyone knows that it says we'll destroy Israel. But Qatar, he said, funded the Nakba terrorists on October 7th, 2023. Qatar operates Al Jazeera, which is the most poisonous cancer hurting us. Qatar reaches places of influence in America universities. And most importantly, it has access to the most sacred place for the security of Israel. That is the office of the Prime Minister of Israel. This was an apparent reference to the so-called Qatar Gate scandal, in which former and current aides to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, including senior aide Yonatan Urich, are alleged to have taken money to spearhead a public relations campaign to cast Qatar in a positive light for over a year after the October 7 Hamas onslaught. Qatar works against us and poisons us from within, Bennett said, fuming that Israel does not define Qatar as an enemy state. Therefore, quote, according to the law today, anyone can work for Qatar. You can be an agent for Qatar, he said. The most dangerous enemy to Israel is not defined as an enemy state. Many in Israel are on Qatar's payroll, he claimed. Quote, there are research institutes in Israel, there are influencers in Israel, and maybe also officials in Israel who are on Qatar's payroll. Quote, in the next government, we will define Qatar as an enemy, he vowed, saying that it is unforgivable that this is not already the case. The comments marked the second time in days that Bennett hit out at Qatar, after he told a security conference on Monday that, quote, the leaders of Qatar have a goal of eliminating Israel, period. Quote, there are people who call it a complicated state. It's not complicated. After October 7th, nothing is complicated here. Qatar is an enemy. It's simple, he said at the X conference. So if you go and you listen to the BB files, if you go and you listen to anything I've written or talked about in the past 3 years, you'll know that, as I've explained, well, they don't explain this in the BB files, but I'll give you the background. In March of 2018, after like a year of negotiations, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, which is the West Bank government, they agreed to surrender control of the Gaza government to the Palestinian Authority, meaning Hamas, I believe, was going to maintain security privileges in Gaza, but they were going to give all the administrative privileges, meaning like running the government of Gaza, back to the Palestinian Authority. In the BB files, they explained that just the idea of the two governments working together, the Gaza government and the West Bank government, was a problem. And they also acknowledge in the film that the Gaza government are extremists, that would be Hamas, and that the West Bank government, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah is what the party's called, are the moderates. Those are the reasonable ones. And so any collaboration between those two was completely unacceptable in the eyes of Netanyahu, and that had to be stopped at all costs. And so when they send the prime minister, this is the Palestinian Authority, sends their prime minister, the Palestinian prime minister, to Gaza in like an armed convoy to meet, because, they're physically separated. The convoy is attacked, or there's a roadside bomb that it blows up. It almost kills the prime minister. He survives. But that was when the Palestinian Authority says, you know what? We're done. Like, we tried to negotiate. You said we had a deal, and then when we came to meet you to like enact the deal, you tried to kill the prime minister. We're done. You can starve to death. Let the people eat you. We don't care. No more money from us. You're not getting any more money from the Palestinian Authority. That was when Netanyahu said, we have an opportunity here. Let's fund Hamas. Let's give them money to keep them alive, to keep them going, and encourage them to fight their brothers in the West Bank. And let's start infighting, right? Let's start an escalation campaign where they have to compete for the support of the Palestinian people. Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, has always advocated for peace. That this was on the advice of Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat told Mahmoud Abbas, who's the president of the Palestinian Authority, he told him, do not pick up a weapon like I did and fight as a terrorist. Be the man of peace, because if you're the man of peace, they can never tear down your image, right? And so Fatah has had to fight this uphill battle. This is Mahmoud Abbas, because in the face of IDF aggression, Israeli aggression, they have done nothing to fight back in the eyes of the Muslims. And so they are often accused of being Israeli puppets. They're often accused of being corrupt and in bed with the Israeli government. That's the rhetoric that Hamas uses to recruit people to their side. So you can see how there's this temptation in the Palestinian world to escalate the ideological arms race, to be more radical, to be like, oh yeah, well, we're going to go fight the IDF. Oh yeah, well, we're going to oppose Israel at all costs. Oh yeah. Mahmoud Abbas doesn't buy into that. He's like, we're not going to escalate. We're not going to do that. We're not going to play that game. Hamas can play that game and they're going to win some support, but we're not going to play into that. So Netanyahu was trying to get them to play into that. He was trying to get them to do that by bombing their prime minister. I mean, my opinion was the bomb was probably set off by the IDF. It was probably the IDF who bombed them. That was the accusation that came out of Palestine initially, that it was the IDF that did it. Hamas accused the IDF of doing it, of course. But whatever the truth is there, Netanyahu goes to Qatar and he says, hey, Qatar, if you don't give money to these guys, to Gaza, we're going to have a humanitarian crisis, and there are going to be dead Palestinians in Gaza who are going to starve to death, not because of what Israel is doing, but because your friends in the West Bank aren't giving them money anymore, and they're all going to starve to death. You need to give money to Gaza to keep them afloat. And Qatar said, we can't do that. The banks, like our own banks, aren't even going to let us transfer money to them. It would look bad. And they said, so here's what we want you to do, Netanyahu. You send us a written request in writing that you want us to give you money. You go give them the money. And so Netanyahu, in his desperation, did that. He sent a written request, multiple requests, requesting money from Qatar that would be given to Hamas. And the reason they did this is because they knew Netanyahu was going to lie about it later. And so then Netanyahu walks the suitcases into Gaza, gives them to Hamas. The rest is history. So that is now the rhetoric that's being used against Netanyahu by Naftali Bennett. Now think about what Naftali Bennett is doing here. So all of this happens. Netanyahu's doing all of this with Qatar prior to the radicalization of Netanyahu's administration. Because at the time you have a Secretary of Defense. His name is Avigdor Lieberman. I believe he's a former IDF general. He's kind of considered like a center-right. He's like one of these typical IDF generals that's like, he's a right-winger, but he's not like a religious crazy like Smotrich or Gavir. Nothing even close to that. But he ardently opposes Hamas. He's like, Hamas is evil. We can't be friends with them, whatever. He finds out about this deal with Qatar as the Minister of Defense, and he resigns. This is 2019. He resigns, and he goes public. And he says, the reason I resign is because I found out that Netanyahu was giving these scumbags money. I wasn't going to be a part of that. So then he becomes ardently anti-Netanyahu. This is the beginning of people of Netanyahu losing the support, because around the same time, 2019, is when the charges are then brought against Netanyahu for other stuff that's unrelated to this Qatar Gate thing. Because of the charges and then the allegations that Netanyahu was giving Hamas money, that's when his support in the center collapses. And he has to go to the fringes of Israeli society to find political support. These guys he's gone to, Smotrich and Ben Gvir, do not like Qatar. They do not like the Muslims. They don't like any of the Muslims. Doesn't matter if they're Qatari, Saudi, Palestinian, Turkish, Iranian. They don't like any of them. They do not have friends who are Muslim. And yet, the guys who are supposed to be closer to the center of these far right wingers, Naftali Bennett will say, his campaign slogan has always been, I am 10 degrees more right wing than Netanyahu is. I'm just not religious. I'm not a crazy religious zealot. I'm not going to go do something that is like a crazy religious zealot, like zealotry. So he says that about himself. He says, I am more right wing than Netanyahu. I'm just not ideologically driven like he is. And he says that in order to keep the secularist parts of Israel on his side. However, Naftali Bennett is openly saying, I'm going to declare Qatar a state, an enemy of the state of Israel. What do you think that's going to provoke in Smotrich and Ben Gvir? Because they're going to look at that and they're going to say, well, why didn't we think of that? Hey, Netanyahu, by the way, why haven't we already declared Qatar an enemy of the state? Well, there's a simple answer for that, right? Because half the guys in Netanyahu's orbit are getting money from Qatar. They are working with Qatar. They have been working with certain people from Qatar. Doesn't mean they're working with Tamim, but they are working with certain people from Qatar. There's a reason why Netanyahu hasn't declared him an enemy of the state. However, the guys in his administration are looking at him and saying, well, why haven't we done that? There's a good chance Netanyahu is going to have to declare Qatar an enemy of the state in order to keep up with to keep up with Naftali Bennett. That then is going to provoke Naftali Bennett to take it the next step further. Okay, well, let's declare Saudi Arabia an enemy of the state. Let's declare Lebanon an enemy of the state. Syria, Iran, Turkey. Do you see where this is going? It's going to be like one step after the next. Like, before you know it, every country in the region is going to be declared an enemy of the state because each side is trying to appeal to the heart of Israel, and this idea that there are enemies everywhere in the Middle East. And the more they do this, the more enemies they're going to generate, because that's the nature of the beast. The more insane you sound as a country, as a government, the more distrusting your neighbors are going to become of you, and the more they're going to speak out against you and be like, we actually don't really like what you're doing anymore. So this is going to become like a Ouroboros. It's like it has its own momentum now, and it's just like with Iran and Saudi Arabia in the 80s. Who is the most orthodox? Who is the most loyal to Islam? Who is the most loyal in this case to the Israeli people and their best interest and the ideals of Zionism and like all that? And remember, Naftali Bennett is not religiously driven. He doesn't look at it like this land was promised to us 3,000 years ago, although he might drop that line from time to time because he knows it appeals to certain people in Israel. He's openly like, I'm not Orthodox. I'm not into that. That's not my thing. He openly is like, the Orthodox guys, those Haredi kids need to serve in the IDF. Like, they don't get exemptions. Come serve in the IDF. However, he still is doing the warmonger thing, and he's still like, we should expand the borders of Israel because he knows that that's Netanyahu's selling point. And so if he can offer that, it's politics 101. If he can offer what Netanyahu is offering, but he's like, I don't have any of the baggage that Netanyahu has. I'm actually someone who can go around the world and speak to people, and they don't look at me the way they look at Netanyahu, because Netanyahu is now universally hated. There's going to be appeal there to that. He's like, I can give you everything Netanyahu's giving you, but in a package that's much more appealing and palatable to the world. This is going to become a thing. This is an ideological arms race now inside of Israel that I think President Trump and his team have orchestrated brilliantly. This is like game theory 101. And by the way, Chris Paul can still be right that Netanyahu is in on this. It doesn't matter. I don't think Naftali Bennett is definitely not in on it. I don't think Netanyahu is either. I think he's just fighting for survival. But the net effect is that now the moderate voices, the voices of reason, the voices of peace, the voices of let's just get along and like let things settle down, those voices have just been locked out of the room and are no longer even a part of the conversation anymore. And that now sets the Israeli political elite on a collision course with itself. And when that reality hits, it's going to, I think, bring Israel to its knees, frankly, in my opinion. And it's going to take the entire Jewish supremacist Zionist state, and I think it's going to put it on trial, and I think it's going to lose that trial, and I think that we're going to see that whole concept get thrown out. Israel itself as a concept very well may survive. Like there may still be a country called Israel that's a democracy or whatever. But the idea that a Jewish supremacist, a state of Jewish supremacy, which is what it now is going to continue to function. I think we're going to see that go away. A lot of things could happen between now and that point, but I'm just saying that there is now an ideological arms race inside of Israel, and Naftali Bennett is totally feeding into it, and Netanyahu is caught between Naftali Bennett and the crazies in his administration, and it's pretty interesting. Okay, so now we've spent a lot of time on this. We are 2 hours and 15 minutes, so we're deep into this. I am going to take a little more time. We're going to do a little bit of a longer show today because I do want to talk about the thing that I think is the most interesting thing that's happened this week, and that is Turkey in Iraq. Okay, so al-Zaidi, y'all remember al-Zaidi, right? So al-Zaidi, who's the new prime minister of Iraq, he goes on his first foreign trip, and he comes to America, And the press is like, why did you come here first? Why is this your first stop? And Zaidi says, I have an MBA. I have a master's in business administration. Maybe it was even a doctorate, but doesn't matter. He's a businessman. He said, I looked at the books, I crunched the numbers. The U.S. is our greatest ally, and so it makes the most sense for me to come here first and speak to President Trump about oil in our economy. From there, he goes to Iran, and that's where he signs the deal to build the railroads. He signs the deal to cooperate to disarm the terrorist groups, or not the terrorist groups, but the militias that are operating on the borders of Iran and Iraq. There are also some energy deals that they agreed to. I think it's 4 or 5 memorandums of understanding and bilateral deals that Iran and Iraq sign. And that's a big deal because remember, the history between those two countries is pretty bad. From there, from Iran, he goes to Turkey. So we go from this al-Zaidi guy goes from America to Iran to Turkey. Those are like the 3 really important countries that we've been talking about. I mean, the 2 really important countries plus the US, Iran and Turkey, to do like his first 3 foreign trips right in succession of one another, right in that sequence. And he signs some pretty important deals. Now, before we even get to the deals, let's talk about these attacks that were happening earlier this week. So we get this attack that's announced early this week. I think it's Monday or Tuesday. This drone strike that damages Saudi Arabia's largest oil hub. It's a drone attack. They're saying it came from Yemen, but they're also saying, but prior to this, they're saying they were getting a bunch of drone attacks from, we've reported on this before in weeks past, that a lot of these drones are also actually coming from Iraq. Okay. So then we get reports of the U.S. and Saudi Arabia doing joint attacks against these groups in Iraq. So here's that story. Saudis join U.S. strikes on Iraq, on quote unquote Iran-aligned militias in Iraq. And now this was a really, really big deal. Like CENTCOM puts out this big post. U.S. Central Command and the Saudi Arabian Armed Forces conducted precision strikes in Iraq July 28th against Iran-aligned terrorists that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps directed to attack U.S. forces and Saudi energy infrastructure. Everyone made a really big deal out of this because they were like, this means that, this is the first time that I think this is the first time that Saudi Arabia formally was a part of like a U.S. like CENTCOM attack, allegedly against Iran. Now, at the same time, a spokesman for the Saudi military, Major General Turki al-Maliki, comes out and says the kingdom emphasizes that it does not seek escalation, but will respond to any aggression it faces. At the same time, we get Khalid bin Salman. This is the brother of the crown prince. He goes to where is he? This is the defense minister of Saudi Arabia. He goes to the White House. This is like the day after, and he says, "I just want to be clear: these attacks were not a sign that we are like joining the war effort. We actually are trying to de-escalate stuff. So don't think for a minute that this has anything to do with Iran." That's what he says. I think the quote. Let me see if I can find the quote. It says, "Quote: Prince Khalid told J.D. Vance that Netanyahu is pushing for escalation with Iran, while Saudi Arabia wants de-escalation because it is a more fruitful path." Now, that same day, we get this story from Iraq. This is the same day that these attacks are happening. Kiev-linked militants busted in Iraq, according to a top official. Says Ukraine has denied any involvement, dismissing the allegations as unfounded and unsubstantiated. The Iraqi authorities have busted several militant cells linked to Ukraine that were involved in multiple attacks within the country, according to National Security Advisor Qasim al-Aboudi. The top official made the remarks on Monday during an interview with Dijla TV, stating that the country's intelligence services has concluded that Ukraine has been meddling with Iraq. Quote, we arrested a limited number of groups that carried out attacks inside Iraqi territory and targeted several facilities. During questioning, they confessed to working for Ukraine, al-Aboudi said. The advisor did not name the facilities targeted by the Ukraine-linked militants or say whether the groups had carried out attacks beyond Iraq's borders. And it says the remarks come as Saudi Arabia claims it was targeted by several drones launched from Iraqi territory to strike oil facilities in the east of the country. The kingdom pinned the blame on Iran-linked militias and threatened to retaliate at the appropriate time and place. However, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, an umbrella organization for Iran-linked groups, has denied any involvement and accused Riyadh of attempting to divert attention from attacks recently launched by Yemen's Houthis. Any hostile action against the Iraq-based groups would prompt retaliation against Saudi Arabia, the Islamic Resistance warned. Kiev has strongly denied the allegations raised by al-Aboudi, accusing the official of echoing, quote, Russian propaganda narratives aimed at discrediting Ukraine and undermining its relations with Middle East nations. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has limited the fact that the top official made the accusations publicly, claiming that Kiev had not received any complaints from Baghdad through closed diplomatic channels. What does that sound like, guys? Does that sound like the exact rhetoric that Laura Loomer is saying? Laura Loomer is accusing like Russian propaganda of muddying the waters everywhere. Now you have Ukrainian officials saying the exact same thing, that Russian propaganda narratives are discrediting Ukraine, undermining its relations with other countries. We also have, this is RT connecting these dots. RT is I was already connecting these dots before. As soon as I saw that there was that this guy, al-Aboudi, was saying that that these operatives are actually backed by Ukraine. They admitted that during their interrogation. I was like, well, holy shit, this has got to be the same thing. They must be the ones attacking Saudi Arabia from Iraq. This is Ukrainians. The article, and by the way, al-Aboudi was just appointed 1 month ago. So he's been in office for 1 month. So he's not like an old, it's not like he's been around for 10 years and all of a sudden he's pulling this out. This guy comes in and immediately starts, flipping over stones and cracking heads and all that and making moves. And he finds out pretty damn fast that, hey, wait a minute, these militants aren't actually from Iran. They're from Ukraine. And by the way, this was on Monday this happened. On Monday, this attack from CENTCOM in Saudi Arabia, nothing has happened to Saudi Arabia since. Because these Iranian groups said, if you attack us, we're going to come after you. Like we're going to hit you back if you hit us. They haven't hit them back. So doesn't that suggest that maybe these Iranian groups, the Iranian linked groups, weren't actually the ones that got bombed by Saudi Arabia and CENTCOM? Maybe it actually was the Ukrainian-backed groups. This article continues. You've heard this before, by the way. Over the past few years, Kiev has been repeatedly accused of aiding assorted militant and branded terrorist groups overseas. For instance, the Alliance of Sahel States, the AES, has repeatedly pointed fingers at foreign powers, including France and Ukraine, for supporting anti-government armed groups in the region. Earlier this month, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Georgia Borisenko said that Kiev had deployed military personnel in several African countries in an apparent attempt to open a second front against Moscow. Boom. I mean, have we been talking about the Sahel states this whole time for years now? And now they're connecting these dots too. So everyone's connecting these dots. We also didn't, well, God, man, there's just like so much has happened in the past 8 days since we did this show last time. But I do have to pull this out. I got to pull this one out too. Because we got to connect these dots. Look at what Loomer was doing the other day. The same day that she showed up, looking like Maria Abramovich or whatever in that interview, she goes to the Skyfall drone lab. This is the exact same drone facility that Lindsey Graham visited right before he was killed. Right before he died of a heart attack. She claims he was killed by the Russians. But, and she says in this video, Lindsey Graham's Ukrainian birthday gift drone meant to kill Russians, according to Laura Loomer. And in a video released on Tuesday, the day of Graham's funeral, Loomer displayed a P-1 Sun Interceptor at Skyfall, a Ukraine defense company that manufactures interceptor FPVs and heavy bomber drones. According to Loomer, the senator toured the facility while celebrating his birthday and was presented with the drone as a gift. So we know that the Ukrainian drone, and then here's the video of him holding the same damn drone, right? This is just from a few weeks ago. So it's like, we know the Ukrainians have a great drone industry that they've developed in the past couple of years with the help of the CIA. And now we have militant groups in Iraq blowing up facilities and attacking facilities in Saudi Arabia with drones, right? And now the Saudis and CENTCOM are hitting back these groups. We are now learning that the groups are actually working for Ukraine, according to the Iraqi government. I mean, all of this stuff is connected now, right? And it also connects to Africa with Burkina Faso and Captain Traore, right? I mean, I need to make a damn mind map to connect all the connections that we're making just from this one story. And we haven't even gotten to the most exciting part, the fun part, like the golden age stuff. This is all just like war stuff. But this is it. Like, we're looking at it right here. Like, Laura Loomer is kind of like one of the connecting pieces that connect all of this. It's Laura Loomer, the Ukrainian drones, Zelensky. I mean, all the, and we're learning about it. Why? Like, how did we learn this connection? Because of al-Zaedi's government. Al-Zaedi appoints this guy, al-Aboudi, and then Aboudi comes in and figures this out in 1 month of being in office, and he figures out that the terrorists operating in Iraq, who are allegedly backed by Iran, are actually backed by Ukraine, and they're attacking Saudi Arabia, and they're doing it disguising themselves as Iranian-backed militias because they want Saudi Arabia to attack Iran. Because if Iran and Saudi Arabia start fighting, that's good for Israel. Why would Ukraine want that? It's because Ukraine and Israel are on the same side, and they always have been, which is why Laura Loomer is now openly calling for Putin to be murdered. All right, so let's get back to al-Zaedi. So Zaidi goes to Turkey, and he signs 5 agreements to expand cooperation in key sectors. Listen to the cooperation agreements they sign. You can probably guess what they're going to be. Okay, so among the documents signed was a memorandum of understanding between Turkey's Transport and Infrastructure Ministry and Iraq's Transport Ministry on what? Railway and road transportation via the Okavoy and Fishkabur border crossing. So let's look at what that is. Okay, let's go to Google Maps because we like to do maps here. Right there. Okay. So they're talking about this border crossing right here where Turkey and Iraq meet right there. And so to be clear, so they're talking about connecting these, they're going to establish connection right here. That's right near Syria too. You got Syria was right there. Okay. What we talked about last week or week and a half ago, whenever we last got together, was Iraq had signed the deal with Iran to connect these two. This is the one that they were connecting. So they're making connections, I believe, or no, it was right here. It was these two because it was going to connect Benet, right, with, I think it was Benet, wasn't it? It's one of these damn border towns. But anyway, they had established rail connections between Iraq and Iran, and now Iraq is establishing a rail connection between Iraq and Turkey, which means we're going to get the rail network that runs from Turkey through Syria, through Lebanon, through Jordan, all the way down to Mecca. We're going to get that whole rail network is going to now connect with the rail network that runs all the way around the Caspian Sea from Iran through Turkmenistan into Kazakhstan and Russia. And then who signed the deal, the railroad deal with the Kazakhstan? Well, that would be President Trump. $4.4 billion to build railroad and railroad equipment, American railroad equipment across Kazakhstan, which is going to tie into Russian railways in eastern Russia, which is going to eventually connect Russia to Alaska, which will then connect Alaska through Canada to the continental United States. This is all happening. Damn, man. I mean, this is all happening. It's happening right now in front of your eyes. You're watching the golden age happen right here. While we're talking about all this depressing stuff like the wars and stuff, and the shit with Israel, at the same time, this all happened, by the way, the same day that Trump was meeting with Netanyahu. While everyone was distracted with the meeting with Trump and Netanyahu, which meant nothing because nothing came out of it. It's like that movie, The Prestige, right? In the movie Prestige, the movie about like stage magic. They talk about how the magician distracts you with one hand while the real trick is happening over here with the other hand. You're getting distracted with the Netanyahu Trump meeting while the real magic is happening over here in the Middle East between Turkey and Iraq, because we just had magic happening between Iraq and Iran last week. Now we have magic happening between Iraq and Turkey this week, while President Trump is meeting with Netanyahu and talking about how much he likes Turkey. So let's go back to that article. What are the other things they agreed on? Well, they also signed framework agreements on developing Iraq's transport infrastructure in exchange for natural resources. The agreement covered education and academic cooperation between the Turkish National Police Academy and Iraqi Police College, cooperation in youth sports, collaboration on industrial properties for relevant industries. Speaking at a joint news conference after the signing ceremony, Erdogan said the two leaders have discussed regional developments, particularly in Iran, Syria, and Palestine, as well as bilateral cooperation on security, counterterrorism, energy, and transportation. So, yeah, this is like, in my opinion, this is all golden age. So what are the other things that spun out of this? Turkey is now expanding an energy footprint with the Kirkuk oil project. Remember how we talked about how Kirkuk, which is the huge oil field. I believe it's around, is it around No, right here. This is Kirkuk. This is the biggest oil field. It's the big supergiant oil field in Iraq. And when Trump met with al-Zaidi a few weeks ago, they announced that they were building a pipeline from Kirkuk to Banais, which is here. Banais on the coast of Syria. It's between Tartus and Latakia. Those are the two Russian bases on the coast of Syria. So they're running a pipeline from Banais. Well, the pipeline I think is already built, but they're reconnecting it. There are connection points that were blown up in 2003 when we first invaded Iran. They're rebuilding all of that, and they're doing it to run to Kirkuk. Iraq also announced that they were running new pipeline, or they were reestablishing old pipeline or whatever, from Basra, which is down here the Persian Gulf, up to, I believe it was Haditha, right here. So they're connecting the pipeline that's running from Kirkuk to Banaeus, and at Haditha, because the way the pipeline runs, I have the map of it. We looked at it before. It runs down to Haditha, and then it jogs over to Syria. So they're tying in at Haditha to the Persian Gulf, which means oil was going to come up from the Persian Gulf and go over to Syria, cutting off, like, it's going to make the Persian Gulf irrelevant. You don't need the Persian Gulf to get oil to Europe and the United States. We don't need the oil, by the way, from the Persian Gulf. We have our own oil. We have Venezuela. We don't need it. Europe needs it, though, and now they can go around. They can go around the Houthis. They can go around the Red Sea. They can go around the Persian Gulf. They can go around the Strait of Hormuz. All of it. They're going to be able to do that. And who's investing in this? Who's investing in this pipeline? Well, we already learned that it was Chevron. That's one of them. That's Venezuela. The other one who's investing in it is Turkey, because now we have Turkey expanding an overseas energy footprint. And what is this a part of? Well, it's Turkey is buying 15% stake in the BP energy company of Kirkuk. BP has an energy company that operates in Kirkuk. Turkey is now buying a large portion of it. I believe it's going to make it one of the largest shareholders. And that means it now has economic entanglement. It says under the agreement, TPAO joined BP as a partner. TPAO is the Turkish petroleum company. So it's like their state oil company, kind of like Aramco is for Saudi. And it says the Turkish company will hold a 15% stake in the project, while BP and ConocoPhillips will remain partners in the consortium developing the fields. So the experts, which is BP and ConocoPhillips, they're going to develop the fields, right? Because they would take the other country, these other companies much longer to figure it out. These guys already know how to do it. They're going to do it for them. It says the project covers the Baba and Avana domes, as well as these are just all different oil fields that are all around Kirkuk. It says the concession is estimated to contain more than 3 billion barrels of oil equivalent and carbohydrate resources to its initial phase, and also believe hold a significant additional exploration potential. And just to give you an idea, as of right now, prior to the war with Iran, it's estimated that 1 million barrels were moving through the Strait of Hormuz every day. And they're saying that 3 billion barrels exist in this oil field that they're going to be pumping out of. So they're getting a lot. They're going to be fine. They're going to be good. They also got pipeline agreements to expand. I don't know if I had that article pulled up, but to tie into the Sayan pipeline. What that means is that if we go back to the map, so there's a pipeline that runs across Turkey down here. We talked about the one that runs all the way up here through Georgia, through Tbilisi. It terminates down here at Sayan. Well, that same place that terminates, Sayan right here. Sayan also runs a pipeline to somewhere here in Iraq. I think it's like somewhere around here. So they expanded that. It's like 350,000 barrels a day or whatever are going to be pumped through there. So that's a different pipeline. That's not the pipeline that goes to Syria. That's a pipeline that goes to Turkey. And that's going to tie into Kirkuk. Now they're expanding that, so even more oil is going to flow through that pipeline. I mean, this is all, again, golden age. This is economic entanglement. This is what I was saying when we were talking to Faraz Modad. I was like, we're going to see economic entanglement between these countries. Guess what? Turkey is now not incentivized to see Iraq blown up. If anyone comes around saying we're going to blow up Iraq, we're going to blow up Syria, well, guess who's going to lose a lot of oil if they do that? Turkey. So Turkey's now going to be very interested in making sure that Iraq doesn't get blown up and Syria doesn't get blown up, because then they lose money, they lose energy, they lose resources. So they don't want to see that happen. This is what economic entanglement means. And just to give everyone the warm and fuzzies about what this all, like how this all happened. Shura, this is from last Sunday. Shura hails the Turkish president's role in lifting U.S. sanctions on Syria. Remember when Trump met at the sideline of NATO with Shura? This is Jelani. This is the Syrian president, the guy on the left. Here is Jelani al-Shura taking the hand of Erdogan at the NATO summit from earlier this month, from a month ago. And he's now saying, he's like, yeah, Erdogan was a big player in getting Trump to lift the sanctions on Syria. Thank you to Erdogan for doing that. Okay? Now, fast forward. The next day, this is the next day after that article publishes. Now, he's speaking retrospectively. He's like, yeah, this is July 26th, but we're talking about events that happened 20 days before in Ankara. The day before all this goes down between Turkey and Iraq, al-Zaidi and Erdogan, look who's hanging out with Erdogan and Fidan. Fidan is the Turkish foreign minister. Tom Barrack. It says Turkish foreign minister meets U.S. envoy in Ankara. For his part, Tom Barrack says the meeting addressed boosting partnership between Washington, Ankara, and defining the meeting with Fidan as productive. It says Turkish foreign minister Hakan Fidan met Monday with Tom Barrack, U.S. ambassador to Turkey, and special envoy for who? Syria and Iraq, according to diplomatic sources. The two sources said that the two met in the capital of Ankara. So just to recap, Tom Barrack starts off in the Trump administration as the ambassador to Turkey. That's his like official role. He also becomes the special envoy to Syria because we don't have an ambassador to Syria because we don't have an embassy in Syria because Syrian civil war. So once like things get settled with Syria, he just becomes the special envoy. They're like, oh, you're already in the area. You'll just be the special envoy to Syria. Once Zaidi gets plugged in as the prime minister earlier this year for Iraq, they're like, oh, okay, well, you're already the special envoy to Syria and the ambassador to Turkey. You might as well become the special envoy to Iraq too. So do you think that the guy who is the special envoy to Syria, the special envoy to Iraq, and the ambassador to Turkey had something to do with the pipeline deals and the railway deals that we now see between Iraq, Syria, and Turkey? And the fact that this guy is Donald Trump's best friend going back to the 1980s and the person that he trusts most outside of his own family, do you think any of that has anything to do with like what we're seeing happen? Or do you think this is all just like a coincidence? Yeah, I think this is probably deals that were probably laid out a while ago, but we're now just kind of seeing facilitated, implemented. Because remember, as much as we want to think that like these deals were made a long time ago, they probably were. There's a lot of people involved in these deals. There's a lot of companies involved in these deals. There's a lot of politics involved in this. So while the two principal parties on either side might have been like an agreement on this 5 years ago, there's a lot of underlings and there's a lot of like moving parts that they have to get on board. And it's not as simple as just being like, oh yeah, we're doing this deal in 2019. It's like, all right, a lot of things have to change between 2019 and 2026 to make this happen. Like the region has to change. The political landscape has to change. I mean, there's a lot of things that probably have to come into development for them to then say, okay, now we're going to buy 15% of BP's, Kirkuk project. And, by the way, Syria is going to rebuild this pipeline between Kirkuk and Banias, and Iraq's going to rebuild this pipeline between Basra and Haditha, which is going to tie into Kirkuk. And Iran's going to agree to build a railroad between, Baghdad and Tehran, and Iraq and Turkey are going to agree to connect their railroads. It's like all of these countries are just agreeing to do this stuff. Like over and over again. And I want to show you all something before we sign off here, because I want to show you how significant all this is. I was sharing this with the Badlands team over the weekend. Yesterday. Let's see where we got. Just give me a second to pull this up. No. Other way. Hold on. Okay, so what I'm looking for. All right. So I'm reading now from a page. This is page 108 from a book called Robert Maxwell, or Israel Super Spy, Robert Maxwell. It's written by, is it Thomas Gordon? I think it's Thomas Gordon. Hold on, let me just. Robert Maxwell, Israel Super Spy, The Life and Murder of a Media Mogul, written by Gordon Thomas and Martin Dillon. And this book was published in 2002, so the year before we invaded Iraq. All right. It says right here, in the late summer of 1985, a subject never far from the public consciousness had surfaced again in Israel. Did its military commanders have a clear strategy to avoid another conflict with its neighbors? ? There had been 5 wars so far, the last in 1982. Israel had won each one, even though there had at times been unacceptable failures in intelligence. But now, 3 years later, Syria's rhetoric over its unyielding commitment to the Palestinian cause and Damascus's denial of Israel's legitimacy had once more divided the intelligence community. There were those at its top who believed Israel would be forced to use its ultimate deterrent, the one it still vehemently denied it possessed, the stockpile of nuclear weapons out in the Negev desert at Dimona. There were others, like Rafi Eitan, who believed the correct strategy was to sow dissent within the Arab nations. One way should be to continue secretly to supply Iran with sufficient arms to topple the altogether more powerful regime of Iraq's Saddam Hussein. For over 2 years, in the utmost secrecy, Israel had been supplying weapons to Tehran to fight Iraq. The logistics were formidable, involving a long sea journey around the Cape and then on through the Indian Ocean into the Gulf of Oman, through the Straits of Hormuz, and finally to Iran's refinery port of Abadan. From there, the weapons were trucked to the front line with Iraq. Each shipment took 6 weeks to arrive. At the same time, Israel was sending in the same secrecy arms through Turkey for the Kurds to fight against the mullahs in Iran. Before his fall from grace, Ari bin Menashe had been responsible for supplying both sides. The decision to arm the Kurds had been on the advice of David Kimchi. He felt doing so would act as a restraint against Iran's becoming too powerful. Keeping the balance of power in the region at the correct level was always uppermost in Kimchi's mind. But increasingly, it had become clear that Tehran was losing the war with Iraq. Saddam's air force was equipped with the up-to-date Russian aircraft and missiles. One by one, the towns and villages of Iran were being systematically bombed back to the Stone Age. The Kurdish rebels in the far north of the country were becoming bolder. They had launched several damaging attacks on Tehran. So, if you didn't track what I just read, 1985, they're talking about how do we prevent our neighbors from conspiring against us and hurting Israel. And the two schools of thought in Mossad were this. One was, we just nuke them all. Let's just nuke everybody. We have nukes. Let's just use them. The other one was, well, we should just do what we've always done. Sow dissent in all these countries, make them all hate one another, and or go to, every single country has different tribes and groups in it. For example, the Kurds live in Turkey. They live in Iraq. They live in Iran. They live in Syria. Let's just go to the Kurds and give the Kurds in Turkey weapons to go fight the Iranian, go give the Kurds on the border weapons and tell them to go fight the Iranians, to go fight the mullahs. At the same time, let's ship weapons up through the Strait of Hormuz, send them to Iran, and tell Iran to go fight Saddam Hussein. At the same time, let's make sure Saddam Hussein has enough weapons that he can turn around and fight the Iranians. And isn't it funny that in 1985, the Russians were on the side of Iraq? I actually was reading on the Book of Trump a few weeks ago, we were talking about the Primakov doctrine and how Primakov had been advising Saddam Hussein and making sure Saddam Hussein didn't make stupid decisions in the late 90s that would lead to his being invaded by the West. And he was like, dude, if you keep screwing around, you're gonna get invaded by the West and they're gonna overthrow you. They already want to do it. They've already said they're gonna do it. But if you keep screwing around, you're gonna get invaded, you're gonna get overthrown. And he did. But the point is that we were arming, or Israel was arming every single side and making sure they all hated one another and made sure they all were killing each other. And where's the territory that we're talking about when we describe this fight that in this specific page and a half of writing? Well, that would be this area right here. Specifically, this exact area that we're looking at. This is Kurdistan. From Erbil up to Tab, which is in Iraq, up to Tabriz, over to, I don't know, Batman. I mean, this whole region, this whole southwest region of Turkey is all Kurdistan. All up here in northwestern Iraq, this is all Kurdistan. And now we're talking about building pipelines through here, building railways through here. We're talking about connecting all these territories, making all these countries work together. Like this flies in the face of everything that Mossad and CIA have been working on for the past 50 years. And now it's just all being undone for the first time ever. And it's not being undone because there's a caliph running a caliphate who wants to, create an empire. These are different countries, each operating with their own agency, and they're doing it because they see the benefit for themselves and for their neighbors. This is the same thing that built Europe. This is the same idea that built the United States, quite frankly. This is progress. This is the golden age. So I hope that everyone finds some solace in that and finds that encouraging. I definitely do. All right. So with that said, I am going to sign off here, but I did want to go to the Badlands boost because I noticed that a bunch of y'all had very generously left me some boosts. If you are listening to this on replay, you can go to badlandsmedia.tv and click on the boost section and leave a boost for me, and I'll read it the next time I'm able to record a show. And I'll go back to, so I think Ethel Mary was the last one that I remember reading. That was on July 14th. $100 says your history lesson and an insight into geopolitics continues to be priceless. Thank you very much. Here, I'll pull up on screen. Thank you, Ethel Mary. Really, really appreciate your support. We also had SJ Taylor from July 11th for $50. Love your shows. Thanks for all the research and breaking things down for us so we can stay informed. Thank you, SJ Taylor. 11. All right, so Bernie Marie, this is from July 21st. $20. Hey, Ghost. Oh, okay. You're right. I read this one already. Bernie Marie, I'm so sorry. Dr. Mohammed Al Issa, Secretary General of the Muslim World. I need to look. I did promise I was going to look into that, and I didn't do that, and I apologize. All right. So he's been in the position since 2016. He was the former Minister of Justice in Saudi Arabia. He's widely recognized as a global voice for moderate Islam and interfaith dialogue. So it looks like he's moderate. Oh, he led the, okay, this guy led, okay, so Bernie Marie, let me just give you some insight here, because I haven't done the deep dive on this guy, but I'll try to at some point. This is actually really interesting. Okay, so it says here that he led the 2019 Mecca conference, which resulted in the unanimous endorsement of the Charter of Mecca by over 1,200 scholars to combat extremism and promote coexistence. If this guy was in charge of the Mecca conference, the Charter of Mecca, the Charter of Mecca was a document that was adopted by all of these clerics. It was led by, MBS was the one who set it up. And the idea was like to create this almost like a Bill of Rights for religion in general, not just for Islam, but for all religion, to say that all religion was going to be respected in Mecca, that not just Islam, but all religion would be respected there. And then it said, that basically all the ideas that we've been told about Islam, like they weren't going to be doing that stuff, like violence, extremism. It really, like when I remember when I first learned about it, like many, many years ago, it blew my mind. I was like, I didn't realize they'd even done this. I didn't even learn about it till like 2021. But it was that was like one of the big white pills for me that like things were actually changing in the Middle East. So the fact that this guy was in charge of it, that signals to me that he probably is white hat is a specific term, but I would just say he probably is one of the good ones. He's probably a good guy. That's just my guess. But if he is chairing the Conference of Mecca in 2019 and he's responsible for the Charter of Mecca, I encourage you, go look up the Charter of Mecca, and they spell it Makkah. That's like the Islamic spelling. Go look up what that is. Go read about it. I think it'll change your view of what they're doing in Saudi Arabia. My personal opinion is that we're going to see like a cathedral built in Saudi Arabia sometime in the next 10 years. We're going to see like a church, like a very big church built in Saudi Arabia. And that's going to be like a sign that like the age of extremism is over. I don't think it's going to be a sign that like the faiths are merging. When Ash and I have talked about that, Ash has been like, that means that the faiths are going to merge. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's going to be like a sign of respect that Christians are welcome to come to Saudi Arabia and they shouldn't be afraid to come. All right. Anner. Am I saying that right? Anner. July 23rd. $100. Wow. Thank you very much. It says, congrats on the new job, Ghost. We will all miss having you around as much as we've gotten used to. But I consider us blessed to have you at all. God bless you and your family. Well, thank you, Anna. That's very, very kind of you. I really, really, really appreciate it. Very generous. Thank you for the kind words and the kind boost. All right. Diana D11 from July 24th, $11. Hey, Ghost. Hi, Ghost. I can't find a book of Trump. Read Jared Kushner. He gets a lot of criticism from truth seekers. I know. I have never had time to research him, but have trusted that you and BB have. I want to know more. Looked on Book of Trump. Please do one on him. Yes, I plan on doing one on Jared Kushner, and we're coming up on like in the timeline. It's not a chronological show, but I do try to move in some kind of chronology. We're coming up on his episode because he is really important at the early stages of Trump's first term, but also at the end of Trump's first term, because he puts together the Abraham Accords, which happens right before the 2020 election. So stay tuned. There will be a Jared Kushner episode. Bernie Marie again, $25 from July 26th. Attempting another boost as my last one didn't work properly. I was surprised when Ghost read it as the payment didn't go through. Hopefully this works. Oh, I think the payment did go through, but if it didn't, no worries. If it didn't go through, don't worry about it. The boost posted, so I have no problem reading it. Belinda Q, $25. I watch all of your shows. You're amazing, and it taught me so much. You rock my world. Lots of love from down under. I assume that's Australia. Much love to Australia. That's from July 27th, and that catches us up on the boosts. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This will be my last show for a while, until at least next weekend. And even then, I don't know if I'll be able to do one next weekend. We'll see. I will get a Belinsky episode out for Monday night for the Book of Trump, so stay tuned for that. Book of Trump Monday night, 7:30. Hit the thumbs up, share the show, and we will see y'all next time. This has been a 3-hour show, so a rare 3-hour show. All right, guys. Have a good week.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.